Friday, October the 15th, 2020. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of That's What G Said podcast. It's another big one where we touch base on a lot of different things. We're going to focus on NFL Week 6, horse racing, Friday, Saturday, Keeneland, Belmont, Santa Anita, and then we'll close things out with one of those old wrestling rewatches where we talk about SummerSlam 93 with Darin Zoccali and Andrew Champagne. We also have Alex Regla just to talk a little Lakers for a few minutes, so tons going on this episode. Thanks for tuning in again. Don't forget about some of the great sponsors of That's What G Said. Make sure to support those who help support us. Thrive Fantasy, promo code GINO. We'll get you that bonus when you deposit at least 20, all the way up to 50. You'll get a bonus of whatever you deposit. Cindy Carava, full-service realtor, cindycarava.com for all of your real estate needs. Old Smoke Clothing, promo code GINO gets you free shipping on your order. And then our friends over at Sarah Candles, promo code GINO for those all-natural soy wax candles, 10% off your purchase. And we'll talk about Stable Duel at the end with the This Week in Stable Duel segment. First up, a little baseball. Disappointing so far for the Dodgers. So 4 teams left in their quest to win a World Series. In the National League, the Atlanta Braves have been the better team. Let's be honest. I'm a Dodger fan. I'm disappointed, but there's a lot of nitpicking that could be done. Who's to blame? This and that. Dave Roberts, you upset with Kershaw, the lineup, Mookie Betts has struggled, the bullpen's been... You can place blame on a lot. Here's what's the truth. Through 4 games, Atlanta has been better. They've been better. They've been the better team. In all facets, right? Their starting pitching's been better. They've had guys come up with big performances that haven't been there before. Their bullpen's been better. Their lineup, top to bottom, has been better with bigger, more timely hits. And when you flip it around for the Dodgers, even on the defensive side, the Braves' defensive positioning, their shifting's been better. They haven't really made a lot of bonehead plays, whereas we've seen the Dodgers, normally a very good fielding team, they've been sort of just in the wrong place at the wrong time. And can the Dodgers come back and win this series and win 3 in a row? Absolutely. Are they talented enough? Are they good enough? Sure. But when you get this far, you're in the Final Four here, these are good baseball teams. The Braves are trying to do the same thing the Dodgers are trying to do, right? They're trying to win. And now the script has been flipped a little bit because the Braves got through this game without really having to get through their bullpen like many of us thought, because they got that great outing from the kid, Bryce Wilson. You know, he was awesome. And I mean, one thing I guess I would nitpick is Kershaw. He gives you 5 innings, good. He had his start pushed back because of the back injury. And I know a lot of people are going to want to rip on him and say playoff Kershaw, but he gives you 5 innings and he gives up 1 when you're the Dodgers and you have a lot of other options in the bullpen right now. Now, let's be honest, all of those options were awful the rest of the game through. I don't like the idea of, forcing it a little bit more with Kershaw. I listened to some of Dave Roberts' comments after the game, and what he said was, and he's not really wrong in saying this, you bring Kershaw out in the top of the 6th, I'm fine with that. I'm fine with actually leaving him in until there's a runner on base. And what was unfortunate is the first runner on base that inning was an error. It was going to be a really tough play to short. It was a high chopper that bounced over Kershaw's head, and then it was a poor throw. And so now you get the runner to second. And then next up, it was a hard hit ball over towards first. But again, it was just you're 2 steps the wrong way. And that turns into, both those plays could be outs. So I can understand what Roberts was saying. This guy has been hurt in the last couple days. He had his start pushed back. You just didn't need to ask for a little bit more from him. But again, every Dodger reliever that came into the game tonight either allowed a run or an inherited run. So all of the options the Dodgers had tonight, everyone they went to, they all struggled. And, Mookie 2 for 14 so far throughout the series. The bats were real quiet after waking up last night for a little while. So it's what happens in a series against good teams. It's back and forth. It's punch back. And right now the Braves have punched a little bit harder. And can the Dodgers punch back? I think so. But they definitely, no doubt about it, have to play better than they've been playing right now. It looks like they're going to have Dustin May lined up and then Buehler to come back if they were able to get by in Game 5. And then it would probably be Gonsolin, Urias, and, if they could get some, anything from – it would be all hands on deck, if they were able to get to a Game 7. And on the other side, the Astros are making a little bit of a comeback. They were down 3-0. They've won 2 in a row now. It's 3-2. They had a home run to open the game and then a walk-off home run. So they've been hitting the ball pretty well. And now Tampa's probably getting a little bit anxious, a little bit nervous, but the Astros still have to come back and double what they've done, right? They've got to win 2 more games in a row now against a very good Tampa team. So we'll see next week. We'll have a World Series to discuss, talk about what happened for both the NLCS and the ALCS, and we'll see if either these Dodgers or Astros can make a comeback, because so far the Braves and the Rays have been the better teams throughout, in the games they've won. There's been nothing fluky about this, and, I think when you have close games or one decision either way here or there, we can do a little bit more nitpicking, but so far the Atlanta Braves have been the better team, and so far the Rays have been, in that series, has been a little closer, but the Rays has been the better team there. You can create your own team each and every week with Thrive Fantasy. So I know a lot of you out there are big fantasy sports fans, right? You play in year-long fantasy leagues or maybe daily fantasy sites all over the place. There's a new one I want you to check out. I play in it all the time. It's called Thrive Fantasy. And what's great about Thrive Fantasy is it is, based on prop betting, prop wagering, props in general. So if you are someone who does a lot of prop wagering, you will really like this site, Thrive Fantasy. You can get in contests for as little as $1 or $2, all the way up to playing in head-to-heads or groups of 3 or 5 for $1,000. A lot of their big contests range for around $25 or so, and they have $2,000, $5,000 in prizes each week. The NFL right now is their big contest where they have, and they also have these daily baseball contests, all different sports going on when golf's rolling. They have a golf contest going to Thrive Fantasy. When you use the promo code GINO, you're going to get a bonus, an instant bonus credit when you deposit anything up to $50. GINO, anything up to $50. It has to be at least 20. So between 20 and 50, you get that instant bonus credit, GINO. It's the Thrive Fantasy. Let me know if you have any questions about it. Love checking out the Thrive Fantasy daily games each and every day. We're going to do some videos starting the next few weeks with Thrive Fantasy and show you what the app actually looks like, how to get involved in a contest, and maybe even give you some thoughts on some plays in some of these contests each week. Let's move to the NBA, and I'm going to have a big NBA Lakers celebration coming up next week. So over the weekend, I'm going to work on getting a lot of different guests, a lot of people who are Laker fans to, come on for a few minutes, share some of their thoughts and things that they'll remember about this year and this Lakers title run. Any of you out there listening, if you're a big Laker fan and you want to be a part of it, contact me. Let me know. I'll set something up with you where you can come on for a couple minutes and share some of your Laker thoughts. And for some of his Laker thoughts, our good buddy Alex Regla, we had to celebrate with him a little bit and spend a few minutes relishing in the Laker victory. Kick back and enjoy this conversation with Alex Regla. Love saying this out loud. The Lakers are the world champions, and it was a NBA season that spanned basically an entire calendar year with all sorts of turmoil, and in particular for the Lakers, the question of, can LeBron get this team back to where we as Laker fans all have been familiar with them being, right at the top, battling for championships after 6 years of no playoffs. The Lakers are back. The man who always talks Lakers with us and has been over the last couple of years with me is here to celebrate a championship. Alex, the Lakers are the champs. How do you feel?
Man, it feels great. I know it happened Sunday, but yeah, like it still feels fresh. And like you were saying, like what a crazy year it's been. Like you said, it's been the longest year of basketball, and like we've been with this team through everything. So it's incredible to see them, have this result at the end of it.
And it's nice for on so many levels, because I think for me, and we'll talk a little bit about games 5 and 6 in a second, but for me, I think one of the things that I like a lot about this championship is obviously LeBron, Finals MVP and probably the MVP of the league again this year. Anthony Davis, Defensive Player of the Year, in my opinion. I think many, both of them were probably shorted on their awards, but hey, we'll take this title instead of those awards. But it was such a team overall. I think from the top, from Jeannie to Rob to Frank Vogel coming in, to the coaching staff, to LeBron, AD, to the KCPs, the Carusos, the Kuzmas, the Morrises coming in, to Dwight, to Jared Dudley being just an amazing leader, on the bench. It really felt like one of those where you look back and you think of the Kobe Shaq days, but you remember Rick Fox, you remember Robert Horry hitting big shots, you remember Derek Fisher. It really feels like that from top to bottom with this group.
Yeah, I actually went back and I rewatched Frank Vogel's introductory press conference because I'm writing something on the season. And yeah, something he just preached a lot in that introduction was togetherness, and basically togetherness top to bottom, right? From the front office down to the coaching staff to the players. And I think, like you said, that's something that was apparent all year. This team, this front office, and this whole organization have been on the same page. There's been no backstabbing, drama, nothing. It's just everyone working towards one singular goal. And yeah, I mean, they reached it and they did it together. And I think that was what's going to be so memorable about this team.
And especially for someone like you who is so into, analytic and diving deep into the numbers and breaking things down and looking at different sets of numbers over and over again. It's crazy because I think one thing that us Laker fans knew when we were watching this group all along is we knew that intangible chemistry was there. We could tell from the beginning this group liked each other. Just like you said, they all really bought in. And that's something that doesn't show up in numbers. That's something that's just, it's like an intangible thing that you can't put your finger on. You compare that to a group like the Clippers who, everybody picked, everybody said was deeper on paper. They were better. They had more. But when it came down to it, especially in a situation like this bubble, our guys just felt like they liked each other more than a lot of the other groups did.
And I think, like you said, in a bubble and in this kind of circumstance and environment, those things kind of weigh more, right? Like you're stuck with these guys in one place for months. And if you don't like each other, or also if you don't have really experience playing with each other, like the Clippers, either through rest or injuries or whatever, they didn't have a lot of on-court experience with each other. They didn't really go through a lot of the fires the Lakers did together. And I think that kind of ended up, hurting them in the long run, where the Lakers, they came into this environment where it was totally weird and unexpected and difficult for everyone, but they've gone through it together. They've gone through so much together that it kind of really prepared them in a weird way to deal with the unexpected. And I think that showed in each and every round of the playoffs that this team is one unit and they could adapt when need be.
I am so impressed and like a new level of respect for the Heat. I honestly, because one of those things where, you play them a couple times, you watch the Eastern playoffs and you're watching the series, but you just don't know how it's going to match up a lot of the time. And is one conference much better than the other? And what Jimmy Butler was able to do in a couple of these games, and in game 5, what it does is a few things. First, it raises Jimmy Butler up a couple levels to me of overall, like, where does he stack in the hierarchy of the best players in the league? But 2, it really shows how damn impressive LeBron is, because most guys would be like Butler. They can't, if they had a game like Butler did and left it all on the floor like he did in game 5, you're going to come back in game 6 and you're going to be sore. You're going to be banged up. You're going to be tired. You're going to be run down. And to see how LeBron is able to just go out every night in big situations and just put up another big effort. It did both for me. I was more impressed with Butler and then more impressed with LeBron at the same time.
It was really fun to watch, right? Like that was a game 5 when it was just back and forth down the stretch between those two guys. It's incredible. Like you said, with the Heat and Butler and specifically, like I've been so impressed by them and their resilience. And in a lot of ways, they do remind me of the Lakers this year. They're just hardworking, play defense, play as a team, and they have a guy like Butler who just leads them down the stretch. And like you said, to see LeBron not only match him, but, kind of outperform in a lot of those games, it was incredible to watch from a guy who's definitely on the older side of his career, but still doesn't look like to be slowing down at all, which is the guy's like a cyborg, so it should be expected by now.
And the emotion and the difference from game 5 to game 6, just for a Laker fan, it wasn't as if we lost game 5. It wasn't a game that the Lakers blew. They were up big the whole game or anything. It was a very good back and forth game where Miami played excellent. And I think the Lakers had opportunities to win. Obviously, Danny Green, had the wide open shot. Morris throws it away late. But there were a lot of things in the fourth quarter, a lot of opportunities that they may have had. Nonetheless, it was a gut-wrenching loss. It was one of those where, and then you start wondering and you start worrying a little bit. You go, uh-oh. Even though we all, you thought the Lakers are going to come back and win, there's a little seed of doubt sewn into your head where you go, God, this team is tough. They battle. You never know. And then to come out in game 6 and just do something that was like, it's still mind-boggling to me, and it doesn't feel real that they were up 36 points at one time in that game.
Yeah, I think it just goes to show that, like, even after that loss, this team wasn't really impacted or
no.
They weren't, like, a lot of other teams, it feels like if they lose that game, they come out scared,
Completely agree.
Yeah, and then they just did the complete opposite. They're like, you know what? They just seemed pissed off and like mad at themselves. They didn't win in 5 games, so they just took care of business. Is that something they've done all year? Like it was so impressive that they just came out there and they almost treated it like it was just a regular season game. Like, we're just better than you. Like, we're just gonna end it right here.
Even Vogel, it's like, hey, it's game 6 of the finals. I'm gonna make a change to the starting lineup right now. I'm going to put somebody in the starting lineup that has not started all year long. I'm going to put Caruso in there. We're going to go a little bit smaller. Dwight, you helped us a lot in the last series get here, but they don't really have as many. I mean, he coached all season long, and he was just on the Zach Lowe podcast, Vogel, and it's a really good conversation for like 35 minutes, and he talks all about everything that goes on from throughout the year, and you could tell that he like his mindset is so great. He's so even keeled. He just came into this going, hey, you know what? I'm gonna try to instill what I do here. I'm not gonna get caught up in all the BS. And if it doesn't work, I'm gonna get canned anyway. So I'm gonna come in here and try to do my thing. And he came in, he in defense, he was so level-headed. He's another guy that I feel I want to make sure that so many of these people get a little bit of credit, and 2 of them in particular, Vogel and Rob, because these are 2 guys that not only did people kind of roll their eyes at the beginning of the year and in the offseason, people went out of their way to attack these guys, to really badmouth them, to laugh at the Lakers and say, this is your coach? What is he, your third choice? Look what he just did with Orlando, and not even understand the situation that was a team that was trying to tank in some cases, not understand that Vogel the last couple years has really studied the way the game has changed. He's talked about that a lot. People were saying that Pelinka didn't know the cap. I mean, he doesn't know the salary cap. They're saying, yes, this guy who was Kobe's agent. So these 2 guys, I'm so happy for them, because not only were they, like, people said, people went out of their way to downgrade them and to take shots at them and say, these guys are never going to be winners of a championship.
Yeah, 100% agree. Like I said, I invite a lot of people to go back and watch that introductory press conference with Frank, because Rob is sitting right next to him. And people forget that morning, Magic Johnson went on ESPN and kind of just bashed the Lakers once again, even after he resigned publicly. So that press conference is really hard and awkward to watch, because it's like Frank sitting there while, the interviewers are asking Rob right in front of him about the other coaches they thought they were going to hire instead of him. And then what Frank does is just this calming, person. And even then, like even looking back all the way then, he is the same guy now as he was then. He said, we're going to play defense. We have to be together as an organization. And everything he preached during when he was introduced kind of came to fruition now. And same with Rob, like you said, just take a look at the Lakers' current salary. You know, like they're going to be set up for 2021. All these deals they signed last summer were specifically 2-year deals with the attention of what they're going to do in free agency upcoming. And just this team is set up really well to get even better next season, which is saying something.
And you already got the title in the bag, you know, things you're always getting, everyone's going to be a little easier on you after you win one for a while. So really happy for the both of them. And, you know, it was one of those things where it's unfortunate with everything that happened, obviously with the pandemic and the way the season was broken up, but it made this journey, like you said, I think it was something that maybe even helped the Lakers, the length of this. We're talking about really July when the season started of a year and a half ago, when, you know, AD comes to the Lakers, when they're thinking, are we going to get Kawhi? That's when everything really started. Really. And it was so long ago for us to be here now, sitting where we are. It's really incredible. And, you know, as fans who have been through the last 6 or 7 years, I know people around in other franchises don't want to hear the Laker fans complain, but Alex, this was not like, oh, we missed the playoffs for a year. We're talking about the worst collection of 6 years in the history of the Lakers. They broke their records every year, all the bad records. The most losses, the least wins, like the games when they were eliminated from the playoffs, the earliest, things like that we never wanted. You know, we were watching, I drove to Vegas and watched the Summer League games, you know, and saw D'Angelo, Kuzma there, you know, Randall and Lonzo, all these guys. And we were watching the lottery balls bouncing and seeing what was going to happen for the first time. It is pretty incredible that it was just one season for the Lakers to get back and win. It usually does not happen that way in the NBA.
Yeah, we shouldn't take this for granted, right? Like
no.
That's something LeBron was even saying after they won the Western Conference Finals, was like, they're going to enjoy this night because this isn't something that happens every year. And that's coming from a guy who literally was in the finals for like 10 straight years. Mm-hmm. Like, it's really hard. And like, obviously we're not like other franchises where, you know, they have never even made to the finals, but we saw firsthand these last 6, 7 years of just lottery and turmoil in the front office and just rebuilding and different head coaches that, we got a wake up call how hard this actually is. I think that's why this one feels even sweeter.
It really does. And, you know, we talk a bunch and this isn't going to be a lot of X and O's type thing. This is just celebrating some of the Lakers. So just one or two things before I let you go. What are some of the things you are going to really remember back about this run this year? Anything little specific? I mean, even like one or two things for me, it's damn how wrong I was about Rondo. You know, something like that. You know, when he came, like when we needed him, he was there. KCP, you know, things like that, stepping up. Anything that you are just along the way, along the journey, going to always remember about this one in particular?
I think it's the defense, honestly.
Oh, yeah.
That was their calling card all year.
Day one.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people going into the season, they see LeBron, AD on the same team. They think this team's just going to score a ton of points. And, you know, really, it wasn't even the offense that beat teams this year. It was how good their defense was. And that was, like you said, from night one. And that's something Frank Vogel instilled to this team.
Another thing that people not only did people say our defense wouldn't be good, they said it would be horrible. LeBron doesn't try on defense anymore. AD's not going to really care. He's going to be out around the perimeter. Who's going to stop any guards? Who do you have there? I mean, Bradley can't guard anyone anymore. And a lot of people just don't give very much credit to there are 3 or 4 guys that were consistently going to give you a good defensive effort on this team. You always got it from Caruso. You always got it from Danny Green. You always got it from KCP. And when you have a couple guys like that that you know every night you're going to get it from, then of course Anthony Davis is not only going to give you that, he's going to give you an incredible effort, like more than 100%. And LeBron's able to turn it on. We talked about the improvement from Kuzma. You start looking at a roster that people laughed at and said they can't play defense. Well, you have 7 or 8 guys on this team. Throw Dwight Howard in the mix when he's playing defense. Now all of a sudden the personnel was there and people didn't really think so. So it's, I'm loving seeing a lot of the receipts this week as Laker fans. I'm sure you are, because people loved attacking us over the last few years when we were down, and rightfully so, right? We were down and we were bad. And it was like what people were saying was right. There was turmoil. Things were not looking good. We would get a nice draft pick. We'd get excited, and then they'd get hurt. Julius, I remember like right off the bat how bad that was in the first game of the year. And then Lonzo, every time he would look like he was about to turn the corner, he would get hurt. And Ingram did the same thing. He was having the best stretch of his career 2 years in a row, and then he would get hurt. It just we would get these glimpses in these moments, and then they would be dashed, and you get right back in the same place. It's incredible to be here, and I'm you've become a really good friend over the last couple of years, talking Lakers. We talked some Dodgers, talking wrestling, and I'm glad we like any team or any relationship or anything. I'm glad we got to share in the downs before the ups, because it's like you said, it makes the ups feel so much better, and we got to talk about some of the worst stuff. It was incredible to be able to talk about some good basketball with you this year.
Yeah, man, like I said, you guys are my first podcast appearance ever, and I've been fortunate to be on here so many times to talk basketball with you, and it's crazy how much has changed over the years personally, and with you. I know you have a kid now. I actually just got engaged over the weekend.
Oh, wow, congratulations, man.
Thank you. Yeah, and it just goes to show how much can change over 1 year, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, this has just been incredible, and like I said, it's been fun to share this with you guys on the show and on Twitter and through my writing. So I'm just really, fortunate and grateful for this show and just everybody who listens and everybody who reads my stuff.
Yeah, you do a great job. Honestly, I would just read some of your stuff, and it was great. I enjoyed it and reached out to you, and there weren't a lot of we were just kind of getting started. We didn't have a lot of basketball people, and I was like, you know what, I love this guy's stuff. I'd love to talk Lakers with him, and it's been great ever since. And hopefully, we got to keep our fingers crossed. We're recording this Wednesday afternoon. We need a Dodger. We're about 10 minutes before the Dodgers. We need a big bounce back here. They got to win this next game at least, and 2 in a row now would be nice to kind of set the series back. And we'll talk some wrestling sometime soon. We don't really know. The NBA sort of right now is up in the air because we don't really know. I think they're saying aiming for maybe MLK Day as a possible target, unofficial day. I'm hearing even later than that. It's going to be probably a year or two before we maybe even get back into a normal or what the NBA schedule used to be, if it ever is. It may kind of slightly be altered a little different, because I know that's something Adam Silver's always kind of wanted to be more of, like December through July, maybe into some of those baseball months where there's not a whole lot going on.
Yeah, who knows? I honestly hope it's not too long from now, because when there's no basketball and no baseball, things get rough. But yeah, so hopefully it's not too long, and hopefully I can come back on here and talk Lakers with you sooner than later.
Anytime. Give us your plugs again one more time for the social media and the newsletter and everything you got going on.
Cool. Yeah, so you guys can follow me on Twitter at AlexMRegla. And then I do have a newsletter. It's called Throwdowns. It's free, throwdowns.substack. And I'm currently writing kind of like an afterword, kind of like a encapsulation of the season, because it's been insane. I go back and start with that press conference and see how far we've come. So you guys can find that. I think it comes out either tomorrow or maybe Thursday or Friday. So yeah, keep an eye out for that.
We'll definitely be pushing that and tweeting and retweeting and all that stuff. Alex, man, thank you so much for coming on with me every time. This was one of the best ones, maybe one of the shorter ones, but we didn't need to talk X's and O's. This was just to kind of share in some of the cool moments of this year. And I'm glad, again, if we could get a Dodger one, that would be great. But you know what? It's weird because I'm not feeling greedy right now. I'm just going to try to soak this in and be very happy we were able to get this Laker one.
Yeah, man. Thank you again for everything.
Have a nice one, Alex. Folks, don't go anywhere. We'll be right back on That's What G Said. One of the longtime sponsors of That's What G Said podcast, Cindy Carava, is a full-service realtor and can help you with all of your real estate needs. You can contact her, cindyc.realtor@gmail.com, or the website, cindycarava.com. Anything that you need at all. If you need help, just finding vendors, handymen, painters, landscapers, she can help you with things like that. If you need getting pre-approved for a home loan, she can connect you with lenders that she works closely with. She covers San Gabriel Valley, North San Diego County, Del Mar, Solana Beach, Rancho Santa Fe. This is a full-service realtor. We're talking selling, purchasing, and leasing. Any questions at all, shoot her an email or just check out the website, cindycarava.com. A big thank you to Alex. Love talking Lakers and NBA with Alex. Make sure to give him a follow on social media. Great follow for you NBA fans and you Laker fans. Let's move on over to NFL Week 6 coming up, and we have a weird schedule coming up in the NFL. So keep in mind that because of the last few weeks, with all the different things happening with the COVID cancellations, pushbacks, some of these games have been changed. The schedule has been changed a little bit. So again, this week there will be 2 Monday night games. There's no Thursday night game this weekend, so we didn't have a Thursday night game to recap here on this show. And we now have 4 undefeated teams. We've got the Steelers are 4-0, the Titans are 4-0, and the Titans, who are one of the teams that didn't really follow the rules, and sort of the reason why a lot of teams have had to have their schedules maneuvered. The Packers are 4-0, the Seahawks are 5-0. We've got 3 winless teams. Falcons, Jets, and Giants all winless. We are into Week 6 for the NFL. Let's discuss the slate this week. So we've got Carolina versus the Bears. And this game is Carolina now minus 1.5. You can get it at 1 in some places too. And this has moved down from Carolina minus 3. They are at home. Carolina is at home playing the Bears. And I'm not a big Bears fan at all. The total in this game is 45. And I'm going to steer away from that, but I'm playing the Carolina side in this game for sure. Look around for the ones in here. I like Carolina. I think they're the better team. Carolina could easily have just 1 loss on the year. That opening week, they were right in that game with the Raiders. Since then, they've improved a ton on defense. They look like they've bought into the coach. Ever since McCaffrey went down, this team has sort of rallied around each other. They don't make a ton of mistakes. They've played smart football. I like Carolina in here, minus the 1. Give me Carolina in the first game of NFL Week 6. Let's go to game 2. It's the Colts minus 7.5 against the Bengals. You can get some 8s up on the board. I'm only going to have a couple plays this week. I don't really have a strong opinion in this one. It feels about right to me. The Colts are going to look back at this early part of their schedule and really kick themselves for not maybe being undefeated at this point. And you would imagine they have to come out and play a little bit better. The Bengals really got beat up last week running into a Ravens buzzsaw. So I don't get a feel for this game. It feels about right to me. Total 46.5. So Colts minus 7.5, minus 8 versus the Bengals over under 46.5. I would lean towards the Colts at a 7 number, but those numbers aren't up on the board and you won't find them. So at 7.5, if you had to, I would probably be on the Bengals side. But again, to me, that number feels about right. I don't have a side either way. It is weird when you look and see that the Giants are a 2.5 point, 3 point favorite in some places. They're playing the Washington football team, and it does look like Kyle Allen will be the starting quarterback for them. Total in that one is 43. And I steer clear with a game like this with these two teams. The Giants can move the football at times. Washington's defense is their strength. They have not been able to move the football really at all. And the Giants' defense has been maybe a little bit better. So, I understand the Giants being, slightly favored in here, but it just feels weird when they're, to see such a bad team ever laying a field goal or 2.5 points. A total stay away for me in this game, and the total very low of 43. The Steelers, Browns, I'm very interested in this game, but not from a wanting to play it at this number. I like Cleveland. I really do. I think Cleveland is a good football team. I don't know if they're like a Super Bowl contender type, but what I like about Cleveland is they're just they do a few things well. In the last few years with Cleveland, they haven't been that way. Now their secondary and is not great, and they're pretty bad against the pass. But they have a good defensive front. They're going to get some pressure on you with Garrett. They can run the hell out of the ball. And their playmakers this year looked like they are in much better sync with Baker, right? They're not asking Baker to do a whole lot. This is going to be a really tough spot for Cleveland because they're playing a Pittsburgh defense that's pretty good. They can get after you too. But I like Cleveland in here. This number has gone down from Pittsburgh -5 to Pittsburgh -3.5, 4. And if you want to play this game, I would lean Cleveland even at anything over, like at 3.5, that would be fine. I wouldn't bet it because I just don't like that I missed the number being a better number. But I feel Cleveland's going to play really, really well in here. And if they beat the Steelers, can you imagine now we're going to start to really hear about are the Cleveland Browns for real? How good is this team? So big weekend for them. And the Steelers sort of play to the competition of whoever they're playing. And they're kind of quietly very good too. And this is the first time Ben Roethlisberger's ever been 4-0. So if you get that extra hook, I would lean Cleveland, but not going to make it a play in here because we didn't get the best number. So Cleveland, Pittsburgh, in, to me, probably one of the more intriguing games of the weekend. How about the Vikings -4 against the Falcons? And we get the Falcons firing their coach, so maybe we're going to get that coach bump that we played last week with the Texans. I think we will. And this is a case of me, again, not thinking Minnesota is that good, although Minnesota played pretty well last week. But I look at these two teams, and the one thing that Atlanta does well is they can move the ball. They can, in particular, through the air. Even when they're, missing a receiver or two, and it looks like Julio is going to be back this weekend. So I think Atlanta will be able to score because Minnesota is going to give up big plays. We saw last week with what Russ was able to do to them late, even after Minnesota was playing well. And I think that was a case, too, of Seattle really not playing that great. I like the 4. This thing has gone up now after the firing of Dan Quinn to 4.5 in some places. So look for the 4.5s if you can find them. 4 is fine. Let's take the Falcons plus the 4. Maybe they get a little rejuvenated now with the firing of their coach. We generally see this all the time. And again, this is just a not thinking a whole lot of this Minnesota team. Feels like a team that Atlanta will be able to move the ball and attack. Baltimore at Philly. Baltimore is a 7.5-point favorite at Philly. The total in this one is 47. In that Vikings-Falcons game, the total is 54.5. Steelers-Browns, that one is 51 around. So Baltimore -7.5 at Philly, over under 47.5 here. I'd lean Philly. Not going to make it a play. The extra hook, if you could, you can find 8 in some places, but the extra half of point here to get you to 7.5, I think is a major plus if you're on the Philly side. So if you like Philly, try to get that before you don't want it to get down to 7 or 6.5, obviously. But the numbers don't usually move away from Baltimore all that much. They're a pretty popular team, and so yeah, if you're Philly, you got to look around at the division again. Somebody's going to get a win between Washington and the Giants. And then Dallas now with losing Dak. If you're Philly again, you got to really feel like you got a big opportunity. But this is going to be a tough spot for them even at home. Maybe they can keep it closer. Yeah, at 7.5, I'd lean Philly, but no play for me. I'll just have 3 actual plays today. We get to Denver, New England. Let's go to, Denver, New England. This one is the Patriots -9.5, 9.5. You find in some spots. It is total of 45 in here. Just a real stay away for me. So many question marks in and out of the lineup with different key players in here. What are we going to get from Cam, who has recently had COVID? what's going to happen with Locke, some of the key position players for the Broncos. This game is just an absolute stay away for me. Melvin Gordon has had the personal issues recently too, so just if you're playing from a fantasy perspective, make sure to check all the players in this game. This is one of them that I'm just not going to play any side in this one. We move to Lions Jags. Lions are a 3.5 point favorite at Jacksonville here. Total in this one is 54.5. Again, just another game I don't really have a feel for in here. The Lions are the better team. The Jags defense is awful. You look at the total at 54.5, and that's just very, very high, but it feels like a game with two teams that are going to score a lot of points in here. No side, no strong opinion, no way to lean in this one. So Lions, Jags, yeah, just feels like a game with points to me, but -3, I'm not ready to trust the Lions in a spot like this as a road favorite. But the Jags recently, after Week 1, have not looked good, so I just can't really get behind either of these sides in here. I will get behind, and we'll roll right back with the Texans one more time. It's Titans -3.5 against the Texans in here, and so you're the Texans, you're a +3.5 point underdog, and this is a spot where the Texans generally do well. I think as a slight underdog against a team that's not, I'm still not quite ready to crown Tennessee one of the best teams in football or this incredibly dominant team. I think they're coming off a big win, so a lot of people are going to jump on them, and that's why this line has moved a point from 2.5 up to 3.5. The Texans now coming off of a win. Are they going to get a little more confident? This is a divisional rival that they play. They know each other. This game could be close, so the 3.5 is great. But I think the Texans actually could win this game too. So at +3.5, look for Houston going on the road to play the Tennessee Titans. We go to the Dolphins. How about this? The Dolphins are a 9.5 point favorite. When I talked about the sort of the scheduling overall, some of the games in the year-long schedule have been moved and team schedules have been moved around a little bit. But as far as the weekend schedule is concerned too, it looks like there's only going to be 2 of the later afternoon games with the Jets Miami and the Packers Tampa, and then the night game of the Rams 49ers, and then the 2 Monday night games. So we actually are going to only have 2 of those games going in the afternoon in that 4 o'clock Eastern time window, which is Dolphins -9 versus the Jets. This is up to 10 in some places, 9.5, 10. Because Miami's coming off that big win against the 49ers, and the Jets are just the Jets. They are miserable. Total in this one is 47. Another one where if I'm taking a side, I could not be laying that many points with the Dolphins. How can you play the Jets, though? Is there anything that the Jets have done that inspires you? The number players, would love the Jets. I just got to stay away. Really intrigued by the Packers-Tampa game. This one has moved now to Packers -1. It started at Tampa as a 2.5 point favorite and has moved all the way to Packers -1. Another game where you have a lot of skill position players that you make sure to keep an eye on, because we don't know. We know some of the receivers for both of these teams have been in and out of the lineup. 2 of the all-time great quarterbacks. Total is 55 in here, and as the only other game going at 4 o'clock Eastern time-ish starting, when I'm sure many people will be watching this game and not the Jets Miami game. But if I'm taking a side in here, I'm taking Tampa. This just feels like another case where Tampa played poorly. Last time we saw them, they lost to the Bears. Green Bay's looked so good recently. Every time we've seen them in a big spot, they've looked great. And so if you're a Tampa fan, or if you're if you like Tampa in this spot, you have to love what's happened, and you're just giving yourself, you earned yourself a few free points here by waiting this out a little bit, because the money's been heading on the Green Bay side. We move to the Sunday Night Football game. We've got the Rams, and think about how crazy in just like 6 weeks of this season, the Rams are a 3 to 3.5 point favorite on the road against the 49ers, who, coming into the year, Super Bowl team from last year, looked so great on paper, but they've been banged up. Then Jimmy G looked bad. They've just had so many issues here. I cannot play this line, though. And I'm a Rams fan. This is a total stay away. I hope the Rams win. If you're a 49ers fan, a 49ers player in this game, and by player I mean someone who's going to be playing the game, wagering on this game, once you see plus 3.5, you have to be ecstatic here. You got to assume that the 49ers have a little bit something left. Is Jimmy G just hurt, banged up, struggling? They've had to go through 3 quarterbacks so far already this year, based on either injury or just struggling, benching. Another game that I'll be intrigued as a fan, but just watching. We have the 2 Monday night games, Chiefs -4 at the Bills. I really do feel bad for the Bills. They got their butts kicked. It's actually up to 4.5 now. Kansas City is a 4.5 point favorite on the road, playing Buffalo. They got their butts kicked by Tennessee, but everything changed for the Bills. That game kept getting moved around. They didn't know if they were going to play. They were thinking about maybe having a game with Kansas City that would have been, on Thursday. That game got moved around. Now it's going to be on Monday because they played on Tuesday. I'm just not a fan of the teams having to shift their schedule around because one team really messed up. To me, what seems the most fair is if everybody's got the rules to play by, in this case to live by, if you want to play football, because that's what the athletes in the bubble did for the NBA, for the NHL, soccer players did the same thing. All baseball in the playoffs have had to do the same type of thing. If you don't want to be here and you don't want to follow the rules, you should be punished. And Tennessee, I wouldn't have minded had they forfeited a game, to be honest, based on what they did with having to screw the whole schedule up, and it affected a team like the Bills quite a bit. Now they got a huge spot here, so what happens to the Bills? Things got changed for them, and now you got Kansas City waiting in the wings. This is not an easy spot for them. I do think the Bills can keep it close, and to be honest, Kansas City hasn't been extremely impressive. When you look up and down throughout the league, Kansas City and Baltimore, sure, they beat up on teams they're better than, but overall, they haven't been incredible and fluid and top to bottom. And really, who terrifies you, right? Seattle and Green Bay have great offenses, but defensively, did they scare you? I mean, do they feel like unbeatable teams? Feels like there's a lot of parity in the NFL this year. Final game will be the second Monday night game. It is Arizona versus Dallas. Dallas was a 3-point favorite, but this money has flipped quite a bit because it's going to be Andy Dalton. We do not have Dak Prescott in there after that unfortunate injury last week. So Arizona as a 1.5 point favorite here. And that's just, again, if you're an Arizona fan, if you're an Arizona player in this game, that's a lot to have given up. You're probably just thinking Arizona's going to win and they're better here. But keep in mind, if Dallas is able to run the ball, they still have the skilled receivers. And Dalton isn't some nobody backup. He feels like a very capable backup for someone who's been around a lot. You going to go win a Super Bowl with Andy Dalton at this point of his career? Probably not. But if offensively, he feels like he's in a good spot offensively, right? He doesn't have to play defense. All he has to do is hand the ball off, make good throws. Hopefully his wide receivers get open, not turn the ball over. And for as good as Dak's been, Dallas has turned the ball over a hell of a lot this year. So I don't know how big of a drop-off it's going to be in that Is your upside anywhere close? Of course not. But we're not talking about a Dallas team that's been incredible, right? They haven't been that great. So as long as they're just and beat some of their division rivals that they're better than, they're going to be okay. This is an interesting one because, again, Arizona, they're getting a little more rep. I played Arizona last week, but they haven't looked great, really, at all. And we look back now at their San Francisco win, and if San Francisco's struggling this year, it isn't that good. Is that win as good as it feels? Is Arizona consistent enough? They feel like this is a great spot for them. So the 3 plays for me this week: Carolina -1.5, the Falcons +4, the Texans +3.5. 3 plays in NFL Week 6. Before we move along and start talking horse racing, let's talk a little bit about horse racing swag, t-shirts, with horse names, polos, hoodies, long sleeves, zip-ups, hats with big races, slogans. The way to show the horse racing fan in you, it's oldsmokeclothing.com. The holidays are coming up, and if you are a fan of horse racing, if your dad, your mom, your brother, your sister, your boyfriend, girlfriend, any of your friends are, this is a great spot to get them some Christmas gifts. Plenty of selections for you on different t-shirts, different ideas, and when you use the promo code GINO, free shipping. Yes, no shipping cost when you use that promo code GINO. If you're a fan of Tiz the Law, Authentic, Midnight Bisou, Bob Baffert, any of them, different t-shirts with names, a silhouette of Baffert's face, new shipments in of trucker hats with the 1-1A patch. Really, really great stuff for horse racing fans. oldsmokeclothing.com. Remember to use that promo code GINO. It will get you free shipping on your orders. Let's get into the horse racing part of this conversation, and we're going to start with Friday horse racing over at Keeneland. So let's go to right to race number 1. Got to clear the voice. Right to race number 1. And I'm going to go to Grapevine. This is a group of maidens, 50 in here, and Grapevine has the experience edge. There's no other speed on paper, so she's got the speed. She's going to drop in class, and she's going to get to the outside after drawing towards the inside in both starts. I look to the rest of the field in here, and we have a lot of question marks. Feel like we know we're going to get some speed out of this filly, and with the outside draw, she might be able to sit just a little bit more. So Grapevine in here, the play in race number 1 at Keeneland. If we can get anything around 3-1 or so, that seems like a pretty fair price. Let's move along to race number 3. Let's go to race number 3 for our next play, and it's going to be the number 2. That is Euphoric. So we got maiden special weights. They're going to be going 6 furlongs in race number 3. Euphoric debuted on September the 27th at Churchill Downs, and she had a good start. She sat third. She loomed up. She was right on even terms at the top of the lane with a rival right for the lead, and then she faded. She's got plenty to gain out of that, and this barn is excellent second time out. So let's give a look to Euphoric. Make sure to toss her in some of your early exotics. If she's anything around 6-1 or so, I'm going to make a win wager on Euphoric. We move along to race number 4, and Tapwood is going to try the grass, and he is bred beautifully for this turf. The dam was a 6-time winner, was 6 for 20 overall, 3 for 12 on the turf with 3 seconds and 4 thirds, and she actually won her first start on the grass. We're talking about Better Lucky, who was a multiple Grade 1 winner on the turf and a multiple Grade 1 winner going 1 mile on the turf. She won a Grade 1 on this turf course at Keeneland going 1 mile. So plenty of things to like about Tapwood, and the races that he's coming out of are really good. In particular, the Sapling Stakes race last time out, he was behind a horse named Pick and Time, who came back to win a $90,000 stakes race. So Tapwood trying the grass, coming out of some good races. I think I said she 3 or 4 times, mainly because I was focused on the damn Better Lucky, but this 2-year-old colt looks ready to step forward on the green. Tapwood, anything around 5-2, and this might be a horse that I would single in an early pick 5 situation, give you opportunity to spread out in a couple other legs. You probably won't have a 6-5 single. It'll probably be more of a 2-1-ish single if Tapwood gets a little bit of money there. Let's go to the 5th. And the 2 Tribulation is a horse that I think we should all include in some of the exotics. In his debut, he was a step slow from the rail. He recovered. He got up to 6th, and he was only about 4 off. He was in the 3rd flight on the inside. He was saving ground. Then he angled over the 2 path. He was in within a couple lengths, but he faded, and that was from the rail. Now, that was from the rail going 6.5. The post position draw isn't going to matter nearly as much going a mile and an eighth here. So you get the second out improvement and the stretch out factor here. The 2 Tribulation will be in all of my exotics in race number 5 at Keeneland on Friday. We move to the 7th race on Friday at Keeneland, and we're going to talk about a non-2 allowance. They'll be on the turf course 5.5 furlongs. The distance here, couple to look at and to use some of the exotics. The 2 Power End. His last 2 starts over at Kentucky prove that he belongs in a spot with this kind of competition, because he's the type of horse who, when you go over to Lone Star and you win a race like a maiden 20 and a first level allowance, you have question marks as to how he's going to stack up with tougher company. But when you go over to Kentucky and you perform that well in those races, he belongs with this group. I think you have to use the 2 Power End in all of your exotics here in race number 7. The other 2 who feel very logical, the 9 Explorer. He needed his last start. He hadn't raced from June of 2019 to September of 2020, and he ran really, really well. And as you would expect, he showed speed, he faded, and now he's going to try the turf for the first time. I think he's in the mix. I think you got to give Competitive Saint a shot too. You can just completely dismiss his race at Kentucky where he had some trouble early on and just play him off the previous form, and he would be a major contender. So I'm 2-9-11 in race number 7 at Keeneland on Friday. We move to race number 8. This is probably the late exotic single for me with Admiral Lynch. And the real key is him going from inside to outside in here. His last start, he was a step slow from the rail, and then he was behind. He got caught behind other horses and in tight on the inside, shuffled, lost a couple lengths, and he never had a shot that day. It was his first start in a few months. He will be a little bit better today, a little bit sharper. He's drawn to the outside. There's not a ton of speed. He's probably the quickest if he wants to go. But with the outside draw, if somebody else looks down and thinks there's not a lot of speed and they decide to send hard, Admiral Lynch can sit off of them. And that's what I like about the outside draw there. So you're not going to get rich playing a horse like this to win, but if in a late pick 4, late pick 5 situation, this will probably be a horse I single in on, and then you can move around in the other few races and get a little more creative, try to throw some prices in. Maybe in race number 9, where we look to Princess Grace, who actually was scratched from a race on Preakness undercard, and she's been really impressive in both of her starts. I've been waiting for her to run after that day when she scratched, and I think this is a good spot for her. There's nobody in here that terrifies you. When you just look on basic numbers and figures, she's not overmatched. She does need to improve a little bit, but you're going to get a nice price on her in that case. Vitesse is another one who I'd look at in here too. So the 3 and 5 are maybe a few outside the box horses to throw into your late exotics here in race number 9, in particular the 3, Princess Grace. So that is your Friday over at Keeneland. Let's go from Keeneland to Belmont for Friday. Race 1 will be the first play at Belmont Park on Friday, and it's going to be a first level allowance on the turf course. I'm going to the 4, Cryogenic. He was wide last time out, going 6 furlongs on the turf. 2 starts back, you can toss the race because it was taken off the grass. They took a shot there, and he's just not nearly as good. He hasn't shown anything really on a wet surface. So now you're getting back to the grass, you're getting back to Irad. I'd imagine you're just going to get a better trip than you got last time out. And look back at the race on July the 26th at Saratoga. A repeat of that puts him right there. he's a little bit too big of a price. Anything around 4-1 or so makes a lot more sense on Cryogenic. So if he's that price, let's play him to win. Make sure to throw him in your early pick 5s there. We move to the later part of the card at Belmont. So we have 3 plays on Friday. The next one is going to be in race number 6. I'm going to talk about the 8 Shiraz in here, who I think 7-2 feels about a fair price on Shiraz. In his last start, he was 4th. He was too deep. He was a couple lengths off the lead, and he was taken back, and then he came on again. I just thought it wasn't a very great ride, and Saez jumps aboard today. He was aboard for the last couple of victories for this guy. He knows him well. Shiraz is very well spotted in here. The number 8 Shiraz at around 7-2 will make a win wager in race number 6. Final play for Belmont Park on Friday is going to be in race number 8, and it's going to be the number 1 Rock Sugar. They're going to jump on the dirt for the first time. This guy has tried the grass in both of his starts. He's gone a mile and a 16th. In his debut, he was a really good 3rd. In his second start, he showed a little bit more speed that day, and he ended up fading. But both of those races, what I like, they were going long, going a mile and a 16th, and his dam was actually a 3-time winner, and all of those wins came on the dirt. She won a first level allowance going a mile and a 16th at Belmont, and she was stakes placed. So this is a horse who's been training on the dirt, has plenty of dirt breeding, and has 2 races going long, which nobody else in this field can say. So from just a pure fitness standpoint, from a talent standpoint, I think there's a lot of things to like about Rock Sugar. 7-2 feels like the price we'd want to put a few bucks on Rock Sugar. 3 plays for Belmont Park on Friday. Race number 1, the number 4 Cryogenic, 4-1 is the value line there. Race number 6, the number 8 Shiraz, 7-2 feels fair on that one. And in race number 8, the number 1 Rock Sugar, another one that's 7-2 or so feels like the fair price on Rock Sugar. We move to Santa Anita for a couple Santa Anita Friday plays. Gotta be honest, the Santa Anita cards have been just bad. I hate to say it, because I'm a West Coast player, and I've played Santa Anita, Del Mar, back before it was Hollywood. I love even, looking up at Golden Gate, and their racing's been, the quality's been a little bit better. When I say quality, I mean the field size, and we just get a lot of these small fields with heavy chalks at Santa Anita, so it's been hard to find a ton. You're not finding 8, 10, 12 to 1 shots there. They just don't exist. The live horses like that just don't exist. But maybe we could find you a few for Friday that look good and that are worth playing at these prices. In particular, race number 3, the number 10 Me Likey. So you've got good precocious breeding here. This is a 2-year-old son of Square Eddie. The dam, too much excess, so you've got some in excess bled there. The dam was 0-2, but she's produced 5 foals to race. 4 of them have won. 2 of them have won on the turf, and both are stakes winners. They've earned altogether $717,000 in earnings with those 5. So you got a solid win early pedigree. You got a horse who has some foundation. You got with the training, and you've got a barn who can win early. There are a lot of things that are positive signals for Me Likey. The outside draw, I don't love, but it'll be built into the price a little bit, right? We don't want to take less than 4-1 or so. Me Likey, I think he'll probably be somewhere around 5, 8-1 on the morning line. Me Likey in race number 3. We move to race number 5, and the next play is going to be the 1 Tap Water. I think 5-2 is probably as low as we'd want to go on Tap Water here. She is a filly who is going to be making her 3rd start off of a long layoff, and this is the first time in her career when she's ever put 3 starts together. The last time she raced was the first time she's really put 2 starts together ever. And when we saw her on September the 5th, she broke on top. She sat 2nd. She was up to challenge. She was on even terms with She's Our Charm, who is a rival in this spot. And then she just faded. But now she gets the inside draw. She saves all the ground. She might have regressed a little bit in that September race because she raced really, really well on August the 14th. And that was her first start since May of 2019. So she came off a long layoff, raced really well in August, came back in a few weeks, less than a month, from August the 14th to September 5th, and she might have regressed a bit. She just didn't have a whole lot of punch. She gets the inside draw now, and I think she just saves all the ground in here. And the way this race on paper looks, it's probably going to be She's Our Charm breaking, going for the lead. Is Heather's Gray going to be able to keep up with She's Our Charm? If so, I think Tap Water can sit a nice third behind. A lot of this is going to come down to what are the chosen tactics for Heather's Gray. If they decide to try to sit with her, She's Our Charm could sneak away, and that puts Tap Water maybe in second. As long as she's able to relax and save ground from the rail, which I figure she does, she should be very, very fit and ready for the absolute best race of her career. Tap Water in race number 5. And the number 1 will use it around 5-2. And then we move to race number 8 on Friday. And it's going to be maiden special weights here. These are Cowbreds, fillies, and mares, 3-year-olds and up, going a mile on the turf course. I like the 1, Keep Dancing, who's going to try the turf for the first time. This dam was a 9-time winner on the turf, 9 for 18. She has produced 5 foals so far to race. 4 of them have been winners. 3 of them are multiple winners. 3 of them are turf winners. There's not a ton of speed in this race, and Keep Dancing has actually shown a little bit of tactical speed, even sprinting. And there have been some nice quick workouts. I think this filly has a little bit of that positional speed. You get the inside draw, very capable. Now, Jose Valdivia Jr. in particular on the grass. I think you can kind of excuse the actual finish of the last race for her. She was facing Open Company last time out, and you could say she was hard to load. And so, an easy toss there. Keep Dancing should improve a ton. The number 1, Keep Dancing, anything around, and I think over 6-1 feels good to me. And she's 15-1 on the morning line. The number 8 is another one I would use in all of your exotics in here. Rocky Causeway with the blinkers on. She probably just gets the lead because there's just no other speed in here. Somebody may end up going and then she could just track. But there is just nobody that's going to get out of here and gun it. Maybe the 2 catch up with Maldonado stretching out, and a couple of these horses stretching out. Sure, we could see them going, but Rocky Causeway probably has the most natural speed in this field. And that's why I think Keep Dancing, if they want to get a little aggressive just to get a good spot, they have the nice position and the nice draw to do so. It's 1, 8, and then the 6, Roses Crystal, who had some trouble last time out, who's really had legitimate trouble in 3 consecutive starts where she's due for a trip, and I would include her in some of your late exotics here. So it would be 1, 8, 6 for me in race number 8 at Santa Anita. So 3 races that I'll be looking at Santa Anita for Friday. Race number 3, the number 10, Mead Likey. Anything around 4-1 makes sense. In the 5th race, the number 1, Tap Water. Anything over 5-2 makes sense there. And in the 8th race, the number 1, Keep Dancing. Around 6-1 or so. Make sure to include in the exotics with the 8 and the 6. That is Friday racing. Before we talk Saturday racing, we have to mention our friends over at Sarah Candles. Sarah Candle Company, that's CERA Candles.com is the website. Their goal to create that candle, natural, clean burning, high quality that everyone can enjoy. The key for them, the all-natural soy wax. None of those toxins that are found in paraffin wax. So no toxins, no pollutants, no carcinogens. You've got the best ingredients, quality packaging, affordable prices. These are longer burning because of that soy wax. They're going to burn up to 50% longer, and they're going to be better for you. They're actually healthier for you. This is a small company made locally sourced, made in micro batches. They are hand poured. And when you use the promo code GINO, you get 10% off your purchase. Another great holiday gift for someone here. Everybody loves a candle. You can get different scents for different friends, different members of your family, and you're going to save a few bucks when you use that promo code GINO. Gets you 10% off of your purchase. 25 different scents available, 3 different sizes. SarahCandles.com. Let's take a run through the Saturday card over at Keeneland and get those past performances out for October the 17th. So in race number 5, just a short field to kick things off, race number 1, on Saturday. It's a short field to kick things off, 25 claimers. I'm going to the number 5, Bada Swing. Bada Swing. I'm not a fan of just one race in the last 11 months, just one work since his last race, but this guy hooks a field with no other speed on paper, and I just don't really love anybody else in here. He's drawn well. He's proven at Keeneland. He's got a little back class to him. Batter, swing. The number 5 is the play at anything around 5-2 in race number 1 at Keeneland. In race number 2, I'm looking at the 2, Spiteful Charge. It's easy to excuse her last. It was on the grass. She tried it, didn't like it. She's going to drop to a career low spot today. She's shown tactical speed, so she shouldn't be too far out of it in here. And she ran better than anyone else in this field against maiden special weights on the dirt. Look back at her race against on August the 22nd at Ellis Park against maiden specials that day in a race that's come back live so far. She was fortunate. She wasn't bad. She was in the mix early. She made a middle move, and she faded. This is a great spot for Spiteful Charge, the number 2 in race number 2, 5-2. Is about as low as we would go on her. In the third race, nothing cute outside the box here. I just think Kiffle is the early single in exotics. This looks like a horse who's very, very well spotted, is coming out of some of the better races. She's going to be tough to catch and tough to beat. That is the number 5, Kiffle. The fourth race feels like a little more of a spread out race. You've got the 9, who I would start with. This is a class dropper who finds a nice spot, and all he has to do is take to the dirt. He's right there with this group based on, just experience, facing better. The 5, Sermont, who comes out of a strong race at Ellis. I would give a look to the 7, Ultimate Irony, who's at least shown a little bit of ability at Churchill Downs against maiden 30s. Then you got the 1, Mechanicville, from the inside, who just took a shot against Better in the debut, going long on the grass, now takes the big drop down in class. You've got the 4, Saint Vrain, who at least we got a good effort from this guy last time out, but it was sprinting, going 5.5 on the dirt over at Indy against maiden 16s, and this is a whole different ball game here going longer. So this is a race just filled with question marks to me. That's why it screams a race that I'm going to have to go a little deep in some of the exotics if I want. I would look to 9, 5, 7, 1, 4 in that order. In the 5th race, pretty straightforward. I thought the 5, the 7, I Hear You, had really no excuses last time out because I played her and I liked her a lot in this spot. She was a close-up 3rd. She was in the 2 path. She was just off, and then she was in between horses. She was 2nd early, and then she took back to sit 3rd. And then she angled around 3 wide, and she just had nothing. And that was going 1 mile and 1/8. She makes the slight cut back to 1 mile and a 16th in here. And she's better than that. She just is better than she showed last time out. If she gets back to what she showed on September the 4th, that's good enough to win this race. The blinkers come on, Siamese, making her 2nd start in the U.S. She saved ground on the inside in her U.S. debut. She was 5th, about 9 lengths off or so. And she moved up into contention. She was only about 2 lengths off with a big 4-wide bid. She was a little flat late. She lost the battle for 3rd. She's going to put the blinkers on to get her a little focused. She took a lot of money in that September 19th race. And it was her first start in a few months, first start U.S., first start for the new barn. She has a lot of reason to get better in her next start. And then Great Island feels very logical for Chad Brown, top connections, and she just hasn't done anything wrong, and she might be just better than this field in here. 7-6-12 for me in race number 5 in those exotics. Let's move to race number 6 at Keeneland. We're going to look at the 50 allowance here. This is a starter allowance, and the 1 Cool Bobby going to be very tough. The rail is what concerns me and doesn't make Cool Bobby just some standout single. The 5 Mr. K, lightly raced 3-year-old who debuted at Churchill going maiden 75 and split a field of 11, was okay in a race that was actually a little bit better than it would just look at first glance on paper. That was going a mile too. July the 10th, wins breaks the maiden right here over this track. Last time out for Mr. K, it was a good start. It was right with the leaders, took back, sat fourth, maybe 3 or 4 lengths off, and was in the 4th or 5th spot. Came, with a fine, nice 5-deep move, and ended up finishing 3rd at this level. Now you're going to go 2nd off the short break. Lightly raced animal with some upside in here. Puts 2 starts together. Comes back to Keeneland. Mr. K, the number 5. I'm going to be using this guy in all of the exotics. If he's around 6-1 or so, I will make a win wager on him. But you got to have to use Cool Bobby along with him in the exotics. So 5 at 6-1 we'll play to win, but we'll use along with the 1 Cool Bobby in the exotics. Another nice horse to throw into your late exotics in race number 7 is the number 7, Belfiore. Belfiore debuted on September the 17th at Churchill Downs, and she broke really well. She was right with the leaders, and then she drops back quickly. She was 7th. She was outside. She was about 5-6 lengths off, but she really got going late. She was up for 3rd. She's come out of that race with a very nice work, and she gets a little more distance in here. She debuted at 6.5, and that is not an easy distance in which to debut. Belfiore, the number 7. Make sure to throw her in your late pick 5s, late pick 4s on Saturday at Keeneland. The number 7 in race number 7, Belfiore. 6-1 or so feels like the value line here. In race number 8, this is, it's a non-3 allowance that's basically a stakes race. These are older turf horses going a mile and an eighth. You have many in here that have been in stakes races recently, and they found those foes just a little too tough, and they're dropping in here. You have Ritzy AP, who's been in stakes in the last few. Don't Blame Rocket in stakes in the last couple. You have Midnight Tea Time, who is coming out of a stakes and has been in stakes races up and down the page. You have Counter Offer dropping out of a stakes. You've got Corelli coming out of back-to-back Grade 1 stakes races. Net Gain dropping out of stakes. Hierarchy dropping out of stakes races. Temple dropping out of stakes. Appreciato was in graded stakes prior to the return race last time out. So, this is a stakes quality field here. I'm going to lean to the 7 Corelli because it just feels like he's coming out of good races. And let's be fair, those grade 1s and the grade 1 United Nations wasn't really a grade 1. That was more like a grade 2, grade 3. But he's still coming out of some of the better races. And I think you can make a legitimate excuse for a couple starts on his page because of the soft turf. He just does not seem like he's been a fan of soft turf. And let's go through his last 3 starts. So, August the 29th, Saratoga, soft turf. Let's put a line right through it. He's behind Channel Maker, who actually was cruising on the front end. Then Channel Maker came back to win again. He runs well in the United Nations. He runs 3rd. In June, on June the 4th, that was his first start since September of 2019. It was his first start in the U.S., and he was just kind of a little slow, and he picked things up late. He was only beaten 3 lengths. It was a race he absolutely needed. If he fires something close to that July race at Monmouth, they're all running for 2nd. And at a price of 7-2 or so, I'm willing to take that chance. I'm willing to take that swing on the number 7 Corelli in race number 8. We move to race number 9, and this is the Grade 2 Lexus Raven Run, 7 furlongs for 3-year-old fillies. I'm a big fan of 4 Graces. She's a nice filly. She got hooked into a speed battle last time out. She held really well for 2nd, and she was able to win the battle of the speeds, but she did not win the race when finishing as the runner-up. The big question with her in this spot, as is in every race, but when you look at them and you see a couple of horses that want to go and be on the lead, how is this race going to shape up? Venetian Harbor is going to want to go. If you've followed along with this story at all, one of the owners of this horse did not like the way Joel rode her in the last start. He wanted to send. So I would imagine that the game plan today is going to be send, because that was the plan last time. Maybe it's different because they were in a race with Gamine, and they said wanted to take it to Gamine early. Maybe in this spot you do let 4 Graces go and sit just off. I don't know. As a fan of 4 Graces, I'm a little bit worried that she's drawn to the inside instead of towards the outside. She shows up, she'll throw it down with you, and she can fight you off and win and then keep going. I don't really know who would get the most beneficial trip, and it would lead me to Secret Keeper. So I would slightly make Secret Keeper my top selection, but to me this is a race where it would be 2, 10, 5, 6, and 8. Depending on how you want to go, I would absolutely have 2, 5, and 10 as your top tier horses in here. Question marks about Venetian Harbor, but she might just be better than this group. And then you have Secret Keeper, who she's raced 3 times. She won her first 2. She tried grade 3 company last time out, and it was just a small field. But the horse she hooked, Harvest Moon, won a grade 2 next out, the grade 2 Zenyatta, and that was Harvest Moon's 4th win in a row. And Secret Keeper, she tried that day. She broke on top. She opened up a length. She got some outside pressure. She tried to kick on, but she wasn't in the best spot. She had to track from the inside, then she had to battle back. She had to put that paced rival away, and then she tried to separate from Harvest Moon, but I think she was worn a little down late. It was a nice second for Secret Keeper with the outside draw. She could be the one that falls into a great spot here. I would put her slightly on top. If she's anything 6-1 or over, that feels fair. The 2, 4 Graces and the 5 Venetian Harbor, I'd have a tough time leaving them out of the exotics. The 6 and the 8, if you want to go a little bit deeper, I think Reagan's Edge has some ability. I would maybe like her a tad more at 6.5 than 7, but she's another one who might be able to fall into it. And then Fair Maiden, who was good in her dirt debut last time out. It's tough to completely just dismiss her in this spot. So 2, 10, 5 on that top tier, slightly leaning 10, 6 and 8 if you're going to go a little bit deeper. And then just like super logical in race number 10, quarterback Dak looks like the one to me on the drop. And then if you want to go deeper, it's 10, 8, 9. So nothing too crazy in some of the late exotics there at Keeneland for Saturday in the first race. About a swing. 5-2 is as far as we'd want to go there. The second race, the 2 Spiteful Charge. In the third race, the 5 is just a single. That's not a horse to play, but an early exotic single as a chalk single. Fourth race, it would be 9 with 1, 4, 5, and 7. Fifth race, we'd be using the 7 I Hear You, with the 6 Siamese, the 12 Great Island. The 6th race, the 5 Mr. K at around 6-1. Make sure to include with the number 1 Cool Bobby. In the 7th, it's the 7 Bel Fiore at around 6-1. In the 8th, it's Corelli at around 7-2. In the 9th, 4 Grace's Secret Keeper, Venetian Harbor, that top tier. And then 6 and 8, you want to go deeper. And in the 10th race, the 2 quarterback Dak is who we'd start with. Unfortunate with the Dak recent news, right? And then 10, 8, 9 would be the next horses that I'd be including over at Keeneland on Saturday. 3 plays over at Belmont on Saturday, and I really like 2 of them quite a bit. And I haven't liked a whole lot over at New York over the last couple weeks, but in race number 1, I thought the 6 Great Dansky looks like a single here. He's going to sit a really nice trip. Rejected Again's got some inside speed. Ryan's Cat's got some pace there. Leave You with the Smile's got some speed. Great Dansky's going to sit. He took a shot against Tougher going long on the grass last time. Now you're back to a dirt sprint. This is bread and butter for him. Dropping back after trying Tougher off the claim. I always like that too. We go to race number 7. Races 7 and 9 will be the next 2 plays. So in race number 7, it's going to be the number 9, actually, and it's going to be the race 9 afterwards. But in race number 7, the 9, Bernardino. Okay, he's raced 3 times. And really, we cannot knock what he's done in his first 2 starts because both of them were followed by long layoffs, and we really don't know who he is. He actually faced some tough horses in those starts too. Argonne, who won the next 2 starts. Battle of Memphis was a next out winner. You got the Sheik of Araby, who was a next out winner from his career debut race. So it's really tough to get a gauge or a feel for who he is out of those races. But his last start, he changes barns, and he got stuck inside. He was in a bad spot. He got shuffled. He lost a few lengths. He angled inside. He got up for a really nice second. He had not raced from January of 2019 to September of 2020. He really needed that start. He should be set up for a lot better today. Didn't rush back, so there's plenty of time. No bounce factor, hopefully, with a lot of time to recover. You have to use Bernardino in all exotics. If he's anything around 7-2, let's make a win wager on him. And then in race number 9, it's the 5, Exantique, who was at Kentucky last time out, and she drew the rail, and she had a slow start. It was towards the rear. She was about 5 lengths off on the inside, and she just had tons of traffic, nowhere to go. Shuffled, waiting, loaded with run, blocked, absolutely brutal trip. Just nowhere to go, never had room. She likes this turf course. She showed she could win in a turf sprint, 2 starts back going 5.5. The cut back to 6 feels great to her. She was just so much farther back than she has to be, and I would expect her to be sitting a lot closer, even cutting back from a mile here. She just has more tactical speed than that. Exantique, the number 5, anything around 5-2, we will be playing her. So the 3 plays for Belmont on Saturday. In the first, the number 6, the Great Dansky, looks like that exotics early single. In the 7th, it's the number 9, Bernardino at around 7-2. And in the 9th, the number 5, Exantique at around 5-2. We move from Belmont to Santa Anita for Saturday. 3 plays over at Santa Anita. First one's going to come in race number 2 with the 2 Big Story, who's going to stretch out and try the grass. He debuted going 6 furlongs on the dirt at Del Mar. He was 5 wide early. He was mid-pack, maybe about 3 or 4 lengths off. He kept towards the outside, and he was chasing lone speed. It was an 8-5 winner. He just missed his second that day. Now he takes the blinkers off, stretches out, tries the grass. Plenty of turf breeding in the pedigree. Son of Mr. Big with some Dynaformer on the top side. You got some Heat Seeker there on the dam side. Big Story. Make sure to use him in all of your exotics. He might be an early exotics single for me. We move to the 3rd race, and we got Solitaire, who's just really consistent. I have no knocks on this filly who stepped up and tried First Level Allowance Company on the synthetic at Golden Gate going long, but she was a 2-back winner against in a similar spot to this at Del Mar, going a mile on the turf. So Solitaire in a short field, if she's around 5-2 or so, that would offer some value in race number 3. And then we move to race number 9. It is the Autumn Mist. Let's go to the 1 Mind Out. So she debuts going 5 furlongs. She wins. She stretches out in the Surfer Girl. She's right behind Warren Showtime and Croc of Oak, who are in this field. Then she goes to the bench for a while. She comes back. She finishes second. A couple months off. Comes back. Finishes second again. A couple more months off. She finishes second at Del Mar by a nose in a spot that would be pretty comparable to this. And then she cuts back to a turf sprint. She actually runs really well last time out. She was squeezed back at the start. She got going late. It was a better than looks 4th. Now she's going to go 3rd off the bench. First time she's ever putting 3 together. She's going to stretch back out. I think Mind Out is going to run a big one, saving the ground from the inside. 5-1 feels fair on Mind Out. So 3 plays at Santa Anita for Saturday. The first race, the number 2, Big Story, is that early exotic single. The 3rd race, the number 2, Solitaire, anything around 5-2. And in the 9th race, the number 1, Mind Out, anything around 5-1. So, big weekend racing. You know there's going to be big weekend racing contests for Stable Duel. What is Stable Duel? Daily horse racing contest. What do I mean by that? What you do is you enter a contest. So, for example, on Friday this week in Stable Duel, there are contests at Keeneland and Santa Anita. So let's say you enter in a $10 entry. It only costs you $10 to get in one of the Keeneland contests. You enter in, and you are going to have to make a lineup of 10 horses running throughout the Keeneland card on Friday. And you have to pick them based on salary cap. So horses are assigned a value based on what their morning line is, which means you can't just pick the heavy favorite in every race. You pick 1 or 2 favorites. In other races, you're going to have to pick a couple long shots, and you basically have to pick about a 5 or 6 to 1 shot, average in each race all the way through. So, you want to look for different horses who are going to get bet down. That'll give you an advantage. And we are really, really big on these Stable Duel contests because they give you the opportunity to play for 10, 20, $50 and win hundreds and thousands of dollars. Like anything, you're playing against other competitors and you're playing against other people who can't stack a deck. They can't stack a lineup. They can't outbid you or outbuy you in a pick 4 or pick 5 sequence because they have to build their lineup based on the salary cap too. They can't do things that you can't do. It's a really good gauge of, hey, who's got a really good feel for the card today? And if you feel like Santa Anita, Keeneland are your bread and butter racetracks, you will love the lineup this weekend. Here's what we got. New formats, too. They have a double-up format in which the top 40% get double the money. So all you have to do is finish in the top 40% of the players in the contest. You double up your money, whatever the entry fee was. And they're going to have one of those contests on Sunday. On Friday, Keeneland, $10 entry contest. Over $600 with $600 in prizes. There's also a $50 top 10 that will pay out and $1,500 in prizes to the top 10 finishers there. Two different options at Santa Anita, a $5 entry for $250 in prizes. A $25 entry pays out to the top 10 with $750 in prizes. Saturday, Keeneland, $10 entry, 600 prizes, and then the $25 entry is the big one, $5,000 in prizes. You just heard all of the thoughts on the Saturday Keeneland card, so you can go through and get my thoughts on the whole card, race by race, who would be some of the horses to build your lineup with. You got the same for Friday with some Keeneland thoughts, also some Santa Anita Friday thoughts. Santa Anita Saturday, they have a $5 entry for $250 prizes. They have a $25 entry, top 10 with $1,000. And then on Sunday, two different options at Keeneland, the $10 entry and the $25 top 10. And then Santa Anita has one of those double ups where you just have to finish in the top 40%. That's on Sunday, Friday, Saturday. Sunday contest for Stable Duel at Santa Anita at Keeneland. The big one, if you're only going to play in one, make sure that one is the $25 entry, $5,000 prize contest at Keeneland on Saturday. If you need any help, if you have any questions about Stable Duel, what is it? Please let me know. I'd love to help you out and answer any questions that you might have. If you have any questions about SummerSlam 1993, you're going to have them answered in just a moment because it's an episode of the Old Wrestling Rewatch. Andrew Champagne, Darin Zoccali, they join me. We talk about SummerSlam 1993. Everything happened in the World Wrestling Federation. Right in the middle, there's a slight technical difficulty, which ends up being really funny because Andrew is cutting out because his internet wasn't that great. And he goes on this rant and doesn't realize that we stopped talking. Darin and I are laughing. So there's a lot of fun right in the middle where we have a few minutes of laughter that sort of right smack in the middle of our 1993 SummerSlam review. Kick back and enjoy, old wrestling fans. You'll love the banter here for SummerSlam 1993. We are back after a short little recess. We talked Preakness one week, and then I had to take a week off to watch a Laker-Dodger doubleheader one night. But we're back to talk some old wrestling. It's the Old Wrestling Rewatch. Andrew Champagne, Darin Zoccali back to join me on That's What G Said. And this was Darin's choice, and we're going to talk WWF SummerSlam 1993. And it was, I mean, we don't even need to sugarcoat it. The show is not good. It is bad, and there's a lot of bad and then some funny bad things to discuss. But what makes this show interesting, and a lot of times the bad shows are even more fun to discuss, is the time period, Darin. We're at this time in 93 now with all these massive changes. Vince is in the middle of the steroid trial. No more Hulk Hogan. This is a pay-per-view where the main event of this show earlier in the year was supposed to be Bret Hart versus Hulk Hogan, with Bret winning the title and beating Hulk Hogan. Lex Luger is all of a sudden out of nowhere the new babyface. Razor Ramon is now turning babyface. Jerry Lawler is in the mix. Bobby the Brain and Mean Gene. This is their last SummerSlam. They're going to be leaving in early 94. And this is the last TV appearance for Ted DiBiase as a wrestler before he transitions more to some commentary and then with the $1 million corporation. So, I mean, DZ, there's just a ton going on at this time.
I mean, there are shows in WWE that are so bad that they're good. This is not one of those shows.
No.
This show is in my opinion, one of the worst pay-per-views that WWE has ever had.
Yeah.
The in-ring wrestling is poor. Even the big name matches are not what you would expect them to be.
Nope.
We'll talk about that. You have Bret Hart in some kind of a convoluted storyline in the middle of the card where he's involved with Doink the Clown and Jerry Lawler. And this is, just about 4 months after he was, WWE champion. And like you said, was supposed to be headlining this show with Hulk Hogan. And then, of course, you get the ending of this pay-per-view where it was as if Lex Luger won the presidential election and conceivably won nothing. And then it even gets worse from there with the Lex Express video roll package after that.
Unbelievable.
Followed by the confrontation of the poor man's Brock Lesnar, Ludwig Borga, and Lex Luger to set up their feud that never really culminates into anything. I mean, this is just from bad to worse, from start to finish. But there was a lot of things going on behind the scenes in WWE politically that make 1993 a very interesting year to talk about, despite the fact that the actual wrestling and storylines are probably some of the worst in the company's history.
There actually are a couple of isolated good to very good matches on this show. My biggest problem was, and I mentioned this to Gino and Darin, maybe I texted you too, this was a show that you could have conceivably fit into a tight hour and 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Except it's 2 hours and 47 minutes.
So much filler.
Yeah, and that's not something that we were accustomed to with WWF pay-per-views, because for everything bad that WWF ever put out there, everything that flopped from a creative standpoint, in some instances where the matches weren't that good, whatever, their television production was still always top-notch. Here, you get what would be a decent hour and 30-minute show, except it goes almost double that. And this takes me back to a couple of months ago when we recapped WCW Halloween Havoc 1998, as I hear Darin shuddering over there in Staten Island from the memories of that one, because this was in large part a lot of the same stuff. A lot of things that didn't need to be on pay-per-view, a lot of segments that didn't need to get booked, some things that were just unnecessarily long. And while there were a couple of really cool matches, a couple of really cool moments, on the whole, it's a stinker.
Every single thing about this show, and I'll give this show one, like, a positive, and there'll be some positives throughout it. One of the positives I'll give it from the beginning. They made the main event match feel like a big deal. They very much did, with everything going on with the Yoko entourage, the announcers, the package at the beginning, the way that Vincent and Bobby are talking Lex all night and pushing him, and the way they're pushing the Lex Express, all that, right? They make it feel like a big deal, and then they just don't go through. I mean, there's nothing about this when you rewatch it. If you've never watched it again, there's no way in hell you think Lex Luger is not winning the title at this show. I mean, there's just no way. Everything they're doing, the shots he takes at Hulk Hogan and uplifts Lex Luger, and there are little things I'll point out throughout the show. And I mean, we get it started right away. It's a Mean Gene voiceover for the intro, and then we see the Lex Express and Lex Luger meeting hundreds of thousands of Americans now at the Palace of Auburn Hills. And then right away we get Vince. He welcomes us in screaming, "The Lex Express has stopped in suburban Detroit. The Lex Express has stopped in Auburn Hills. The Lex Express has stopped at the Palace. The Lex Express has stopped at SummerSlam." And he's
Was that Vince McMahon or Rita Repulsa from the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers show?
A little bit of both. Maybe some Luna in the mix too. He's alongside Bobby the Brain. And they immediately, get into the main event. They run down the card, 3 titles on the line. Jerry says actually 4, because the King of the Ring is on the line with Bret the Hitman Hart versus Jerry the King Lawler. And we get into our first match right away. It's the $1 Million Man versus Razor Ramon. And we could tell what they were doing with this match, Darin, this match goes 7 minutes, and this match offends me probably one of the least of any matches on the show, because you know what it is. This is to get Razor over as a babyface. You put him in against a guy who's a long-time heel, and you know he's going to get booed. So that means you know Razor will get the cheers in here because you're trying to turn him anyways. And this is Ted DiBiase's last match on TV. They had last pay-per-view match. They had the little feud going with he and IRS with Razor and the 1-2-3 Kid, and we see IRS beat the 1-2-3 Kid later in the show. So, this isn't great. It's not awful. These are two pros. We get to see things that we expect. It's just slow, and you could see DiBiase just didn't have a whole lot left.
Yeah, he's near the end of his career. One thing that that kind of struck me, I forgot how brief Razor was actually a heel for.
I mean,
looking back on it, it felt like longer. Yep. You think about the stuff that he did with Flair and Macho Man at the end of the year.
Not even really a full year.
Yeah, exactly. And then he had the big rivalry with Brett going into the Royal Rumble match, and then through WrestleMania 9. Yeah. So it felt like he was a heel for a lot longer than he was. And I didn't realize until I saw this that they had already begun to turn him face. Yeah, I mean, look, the whole 1-2-3 Kid thing was going on. They worked to get him over as a baby face. You get the Razor's Edge, formerly known as the Diamond Death Drop when he was the Diamond Stud in WCW. Yeah, I mean, look, there's nothing offensive about this match. Two pros, like you said, doing the necessary work to get over the new baby face in the company. And obviously, unbeknownst to us at this point in time, Razor has some monstrous things on the horizon. Obviously, the big rivalry that he's going to have with Shawn, all of his work that he's going to do as an Intercontinental Champion, and of course, eventually becoming, the lead member, one of the lead members of the NWO. So this is one of those times that Razor's career kind of takes a different path, goes from heel to babyface, and sets us up for the future Razor Ramon. But match-wise, it's fine. It does what it's supposed to do and gets the show off on a relatively good foot, but unfortunately, things go south rather quickly.
Yeah.
One thing I will say, at least for the early part of this show, this crowd was hot.
Very.
Razor's music hits and the crowd roars, which once again brings to mind a question that I ask every time we review a WWF pay-per-view from this time period. You're telling me they couldn't have at least tried something with Razor at the top of the card? Come on.
He never really had another... Did he have another main event, really a title match? Or a feud on pay-per-view again where he had a title match? Maybe one against Diesel at an In Your House or something? I mean, I can't even recall ever him he was in the IC level for so long, and honestly, Andrew, that was the point the reason why he left. You hear him in all the documentaries and the behind-the-scenes stuff when he talks about it. He went to Vince and he said, hey, what can I do to improve my status here? I'd like to be able to be at least in the main event picture, get some shots at the title, a title run. Can I do anything? What can I do? And Vince said, there's nothing you can do.
And instead of that, we got heel Yokozuna on top for 9 months.
I know. You're telling me. And there's one thing that we see later in the show too. It's funny, when Macho Man gets announced to come out to to introduce Lex Luger. It's funny. It's you think about how just a Macho Man Yokozuna would have felt even better in that. I guess a main event there. The crowd was still behind Randy, and that would have even been fine. But everything they just did didn't really work. We'll get farther there. But Andrew, go ahead.
No, just there's not a whole lot to say about this match. It's a 7-minute opener. For what it is, it's fine. It's DiBiase's last WWF match as an in-ring competitor. There are varying stories as to why he left, and we haven't really gotten the full story as far as what went down, because his back at this point was not great. It wasn't wrecked, but it wasn't great. He says that he left WWF to work on issues pertaining to his marriage, because DiBiase would wind up being a born-again Christian a couple of years later down the line. He was not there at that point, and there was a lot going on. However, we don't necessarily know if that's true, because a couple months after that, he turns up in All Japan Pro Wrestling to go work tag matches with Stan Hansen. So how much truth we can say to any of that is, speculative at best. But he would wind up going to All Japan. He had the run with Hansen, and that's where his back got wrecked to where he couldn't work as an in-ring competitor anymore. This match was fine. DiBiase does the honorable thing, which everyone obviously expected him to do as a second-generation guy. He puts Razor over on his way out the door. There's some bad stuff on this show. This match isn't one of them. It's just, it is what it is.
Yep, and then there's a couple things throughout that I thought were funny. At one point, Bobby says that Ted offered Razor a job as a domestic. And he should have taken it. And he describes being a domestic as, they hand you the toilet brush and the dust mop, and you just got to make sure everything is right in the house. It was just so nonchalant and funny the way he was describing it. And he says afterwards, maybe Razor can have a cerveza and 1-2-3 Kid can have some Ovaltine, and they can compare in the evening. Hey, I loved me some Ovaltine. I loved getting the powder and the spoon, mixing that up. I was a big Ovaltine guy. So, hey, I just wanted to give Ovaltine a little shout out there.
I bet your check is in the mail.
It's got to be. It's got to be 12 cents coming to me.
More Ovaltine, please.
Yeah. Razor at the end, DiBiase undoes the turnbuckle. He exposes it, and then Razor actually is able to turn it around. And he goes in, hits him into the exposed turnbuckle, and then Razor hits the Razor's Edge for the W. 7 minutes and 30 seconds or so. We get to Todd Pettengill. He's talking with Mrs. Steiner and the Steiner's sister, both of which are just awful on camera. But Todd always gets into these really funny interviews with people where he's just asking them questions that it's like, what do you think about that Frankensteiner, huh? It's like, what is she going to say? She's got nothing to, whatever you say, Todd, that's just the response all the time. That's always how it was with this guy. He actually gets interrupted quickly by Jim Cornette, who says Michigan's favorite sons are about to go down to the tag team, who is better late at night than David Letterman, the Heavenly Bodies. Then Tom Pritchard grabs the mic, calls Cornette the greatest wrestling manager in the world. And again, you get the Steiner brothers versus the Heavenly Bodies for the tag team titles. This isn't anything bad. It's fine. The Bodies attack the Steiners from behind before they can get the jackets off. Double team to Rick Steiner. Heels get the advantage early. Rick gets back in the ring. Steiners with the double team. The ref is just letting everyone in there. He is just atrocious throughout this match. Just awful officiating throughout. Not doing a thing. Then the heels roll out. Cornette gets furious. Vince says they're wearing the colors from the University of Michigan. And Bobby says, well, that's exciting. As far as I'm concerned, University of Michigan, anyone can graduate from that school. And then Bobby, this is a weird moment, Darin, and I tried to look this up. He gives out their address. I'm not sure if it was like an inside joke at the time. I looked this up just to see. It's a body tattoo place. It's been a nail salon in that location. This was a weird moment, but DZ, not a bad match in any sense of the word. These guys could all work. They could all go.
Yeah, I mean, at this time, you have Scott Steiner before he's, Big Papa Pump Scott Steiner. So he's still kind of doing some of that high-flying stuff that he did. I always enjoyed them in the ring. I thought that they had good chemistry, the Steiner brothers. I always liked their moveset. Scott Steiner's Tilt-A-Whirl Slam was one of my favorite moves at that time because he did it with such ease, and it's not an easy move to do. This match, I don't really remember the build-up leading up to this. Now, I know that Smoky Mountain at this time, well, a little backstory. So the Heavenly Bodies were a tag team that came from Smoky Mountain Wrestling, managed by Jim Cornette. They were originally Dr. Tom Pritchard and Sweet Stan Lane. Beautiful Bobby Eaton came into the fold. They kind of had like a 3-man demolition thing for a while. Sweet Stan Lane ended up leaving the group. Then he ended up getting the Gigolo Jimmy Del Rey in there as well. And there was some cross-promotional stuff going on that allowed the Heavenly Bodies to wrestle originally in WCW and then WWE. They did some stuff with the Rock and Roll Express. There was a lot of cool things going on at that time with this. But I don't really remember the build-up for this particular match. That being said, at this point in my life, I was 10 years old. I absolutely hated Jim Cornette. The guy just did not
Me too, yeah.
shut up, and everything was loud and yelling, and with that stupid tennis racket. And of course, at that time, being just 10, you don't really know Jim Cornette in terms of what he's actually done in wrestling. You just think he's a loudmouth, annoying manager. So I could not stand him at all, which was him doing a good job as obviously a heel manager. But this match is fine. I was happy that they could have botched the ending by having the wrong guy pin. They actually almost did, but they had Rick go down for the cover after the Frankensteiner. It was kind of weird because Scott hits the move and then Rick gets the pin. He's not really involved in the move, but I mean, aside from that, the match is fine. It's not sensational. It's not bad. And at the time, you're watching the first two matches, and you're saying, all right, first match was okay. This
not
match,
bad.
Yeah, we're off to a pretty decent start, And you, with the match that's coming up after that, you would think you're off to a really good start. But Andrew, I mean, there was a lot of cool stuff going on with Smoky Mountain at the time. But to be honest with you, I don't really remember this rivalry looking back on it.
I don't remember it much either. I do know that the very next year, the Heavenly Bodies would have the match that a lot of people remember them for. They had a match in Smoky Mountain Wrestling with the Thrill Seekers, a team of two young upstarts from Canada named Chris Jericho and Lance Storm. Mm-hmm. The story behind that match is hysterical. Jericho's diving into a pool trying to practice a shooting star press, and he breaks his arm. The Heavenly Bodies and the Thrill Seekers, somehow, nobody has any idea how this happened. They still managed to work a 4-star match together. That's on YouTube for anybody that wants to look. Chris Jericho bleeds a lot in that match. That's the match that would wind up getting him, quote-unquote, discovered by some of the bigger groups in Japan. He was working for some places in Japan, but this was something that he prided himself on for a long, long time. The full story is in his first book, which is a tremendous read. This match was pretty darn good. I enjoyed it. The Heavenly Bodies could work. Rick and Scott Steiner from the University of Michigan. And whenever the crowd starts barking, it's a good match. And this was pretty cool. Anytime Scott gets the Frankensteiner on somebody, it's a cool visual because, that's the kind of move where either guy can break his neck if you're not careful. But this was a pretty good match. And at this point, we're 20, 25 minutes into the pay-per-view. We get two okay matches. We get a comically bad interview from Todd Pettengill and the Steiners, which, by the way, has a pretty cool little tidbit in that the sister of the Steiner brothers calls Rick Rob because
his real
Rob
name
is actually his real name. So funny little slip of the tongue there. But
you knew they weren't actresses.
No,
right? Because it's like if they were awful. And that's what I was thinking right away. They're just no response whatsoever.
Now their crowd was into this match, and that really helped. Specifically, they got a chant going, which, as a Michigan fan, I enjoyed thoroughly. And you get the hometown boys winning a decent tag match. Nothing objectionable here. This is fine. This is above average. We're off to a decent start. So far, so good.
Yeah, there are a couple things that we wanted to mention. Bobby was, at one point, Jimmy Del Rey does a little hip shake thrust, and Bobby keeps mentioning Smoky Mountain. So as Darin mentioned, the obvious relationship here, which Jim Cornette runs, and Bobby was given the edge on points to the Bodies. He said it was 1,112 to 9 at this point. It's his own point system. That we got the normal moves that you get from the Steiners at the end, double underhook suplex, Rick with a bulldog off the top, House is a fire here, Cornette tosses in the tennis racket, Jimmy hits Rick in the back, but he kicks out, then Jimmy misses a moonsault, and he nails Tom, and Scott Steiner hits the Frankensteiner for the win. We then get to Joe Fowler, and you know what? There were a lot of people who came and went in WWF, WWE through the years. I actually thought Joe did pretty good. He wasn't around very long, and he's Pettengill-ish. He's goofy, he's energetic, but I didn't have a problem with him. He kind of feels like he felt he felt like he belonged. So yeah, looking back at his few interviews, I was getting ready to make fun of him, but I didn't really have a whole lot to make fun of. He seemed like he fit in with the whole wrestling shtick. So he gets welcomed by Vince, and Joe is backstage with Shawn Michaels and Diesel. Shawn says the question of who is the greatest IC champ of all time, Mr. Perfect or Shawn, and Shawn says he's going to prove it's him. Diesel says the Heartbreak Kid can take care of the work in the ring. That everybody knows that chicks dig this guy. I'm just here to keep them off the champ. So we got very early Diesel here, Darin, and sort of the bloated Shawn Michaels. And we get this match that, like you say, we got two good matches to open. And then you look at this match on paper and we're thinking, wow, this is going to be a really good start. But for some reason, this match isn't bad by any sense. We just expect so much more from these two guys, the way they were building it up. This is like what WWE would do nowadays. This is going to be the greatest wrestling match in history, and they put these expectations on a match that, I mean, these two guys, they went, I don't know if the plan was this is a start of a big long feud that we're going to go through. Because if this was it and this was, an 11-minute match and they were building it like some classic, it didn't make a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, so I couldn't really intro this match any better. It's not a bad match. To be honest with you, these two couldn't possibly have a bad match.
No.
But that being said, when you know what Perfect can do, and you know what Michaels can do, the match falls short. And it falls short. Well, number one, I will say this, and you briefly mentioned it. This is probably the heaviest I've ever seen Shawn Michaels in any wrestling match. And Perfect is actually in better shape than I remember him in terms of trimming off the fat. But Michaels is, I won't call him pudgy, but...
And his trunks, he's wearing his trunks goofy high, too.
Yeah.
Like really, really high up. It's a different look, yeah.
Let's just say he hasn't shed the baby fat yet. At this point.
Yeah.
Now, the match builds slowly. You get some good moves within the match. Perfect hits a sweet drop kick at one point, as he always does. Michaels does great job selling, as he always does. But for these two, the match is pretty slow. And it's kind of a slow build. It almost has like a New Japan style. Now, the problem with that is the match only goes 11 minutes.
It doesn't get to a next level.
Yes. It never gets to the point that you're waiting for the build to get to. And it just kind of ends out of nowhere with a count out. Like, what? Like, it made no sense. So, I would understand it if it was the start of a feud that was going to continue for months and you were going to get more and more of these matches. But we know Perfect was banged up. This is actually his last pay-per-view match for about a decade, I think. And aside from, his random appearances that he would do. But, yeah, it's just it's a slow match. It's a slow build that leads to nothing and leads to a finish that doesn't make sense and comes out of nowhere. And you see this match and you go, man, this could have been so good, and it just wasn't.
Yeah, this is where the pay-per-view takes a big left turn. So, first of all, they do the entrances. They show up in the skybox the Radio WWF crew of Jim Ross and Gorilla Monsoon. If that's your B team, oh, man.
I know, right?
By the way, it feels awkward seeing Gorilla and Bobby the Brain Heenan
not
in
together.
The same arena at the same time, not together.
I know.
Bobby has a couple of really good lines on this show, but I got the sense he was trying too hard. And the chemistry with him and Vince just wasn't quite there as much as it was with him and Monsoon.
Nope.
So they start off this match, and the first sign of trouble comes pretty early.
Yes.
They botch a sequence where they're supposed to hit the ropes in succession, and I think one of them is supposed to stop and hit an arm drag, and it looks clunky.
Somebody overran the spot badly. Yeah.
So you're going, okay. Couple minutes later, Perfect whips Michaels into the corner. Michaels leaps up before he hits the turnbuckle, and Perfect doesn't follow. Uh-oh.
Yeah.
They weren't just not on the same page. They weren't in the same book. Not to say this was bad, but it certainly seemed like after the first couple of minutes, both of them sort of realized, you know what? It's not happening tonight. We're not getting out of second gear. This isn't going to have a finish anyway. Let's just get through this. And that's
You're
what
right.
we wound up having.
It kind of felt like that. It did.
Yep.
Like watching it back.
Now, Perfect gets pulled out by Diesel near the end of the match. Perfect hits Diesel to a big pop, and Heenan goes apoplectic saying, "Oh, hit a man with glasses. Hit a man with glasses." Not to mention the fact that Diesel is, 7 feet tall and about 320 pounds. Just saying. So they do that. Perfect gets tied up outside the ring, loses by countout, and that's not even the most polarizing countout finish of the evening.
No.
So you guys were right. This wasn't awful. For what it was fine. What I liken it to is there's a wrestling video game that's out there that I play. It's called TEW, and they just released a version of it earlier this year. And the worst in-game notice you can get when you've built up to a big match and kept two guys apart in this game, you put them together, you run the match, and there's a big red note there that says Worker A and Worker B have absolutely zero chemistry.
Oh, God.
That's what happened here. And again, it's not to say that it's bad. It's not to say that it's unwatchable. For what it is, it's fine. But when you see Shawn Michaels and Mr. Perfect, you expect something that's 3 times the match we got.
If you didn't know the guys, it would be better, honestly.
Yeah.
At the very beginning, Mr. Perfect throws his towel, and then a few seconds later, Bobby's silent, and he says, "I got hit in the eye with something. What happened?" Which I thought was pretty good. Vince is just laying it on about how this may be the greatest IC title match of all time. It just, the feel-out process early, you mentioned the botch. Some basic stuff that Bobby's just getting overly excited about. These two are showing you more moves than a go-go dancer, and Perfect with some chops. Sean's bumping like crazy. They both bump around, still pretty well, and the pace picks up for a few minutes. And Bobby says, "Look at these moves! Look at these moves!" Like, really? You've never seen this before? Perfect catching Sean, slingshots him over the top rope. That's a good spot. Then Diesel starts getting involved. They did a spot where Sean's got this backbreaker type submission on, and it just looks like Perfect's laying on his knee. It wasn't good. I'd never seen much of that from Sean. There was a nice drop kick from Perfect, though. Back body drop, knee lift, atomic drop for 2. And Bobby and Vince are starting to have this running shtick about Bobby's former, when he used to say, "Do whatever you have to do to win." He says, "I never said that." And then seconds later, Perfect gets a 2 count, and he says, "You should have hooked the tights like I told you, dummy." So, Bobby does have some moments here, but I agree with Andrew. He doesn't have the chemistry as he did with Gorilla, no way, shape, or form. Perfect hits the perfect plex. He has Sean pinned. Diesel pulls Mr. Perfect out at the count of 2. They all battle outside. Sean gets tossed into the ref. Then the ref calls for the bell, and he counts out Mr. Perfect. It's just a bad finish, a match that we wanted so much more from. They built it like it was going to be this great all-time classic. And honestly, you could tell with the booking, they had no intention for it to be that. So I hate when they do something like that. Why? If you're going to let this match go 25 minutes, and hey, Vince, you're the one making the calls here. Don't sell us on this match like it's going to be the greatest thing in the world when it's only going 11 minutes here. And just overall, bad taste in your mouth with this match. After the match, Diesel attacks Mr. Perfect, leaves him laying. Todd Pettingill's talking to Sean in the aisleway as he walks out. Sean says, "All the questions have been answered. I'm the greatest IC champ." And then Mr. Perfect gets up and runs after them. Just so much more we wanted from this. So Joe Fowler backstage with the 1-2-3 kid, who is 21 at this time, and he looks it. This is both of their first pay-per-view. Kid is so nervous he can barely talk. They mention the size advantage of IRS. Kid gives this super white meat baby face promo, and IRS says, he grabs the mic. His like short little promos that he would cut like this, I just loved. He would grab the mic. "Detroit used to be known as Motor City. Now it's known as Tax Cheat City. It's just so stupid and simple, but it just makes me laugh, to hear. And out comes the 1, 2, 3 kid. Bobby says this is the first time the kid has been up past 8 o'clock. And he's got this great wispy mullet going on. It's great. I know Andrew loves that one. And we get a spinning heel kick early for the kid. And for a near fall, kid's flying all over the place. IRS is using the power. Brain says at one point, it hit him in the bicuspid. He says, I'm the Brain. I know it all. And IRS is in charge. And kid would have a small flurry here and there. IRS uses the ropes and an abdominal stretch. This is a good one from Bobby. Well, that's for balance. He can do that. Just so matter-of-factly, like, oh, no, I mean, he can do that if it's for balance. It's no problem. And he said, cheating's only cheating when you get caught. So, and bragging isn't bragging if you can do it. Kid is able to turn things around. He gets a couple of 2 counts and near falls on IRS. He picks up the pace, but he gets nailed with a jumping clothesline from IRS for the win. It's funny. IRS won so few matches. You were like, what? He has a finisher? This is his is this a finisher? Or is this just what? It was weird seeing him actually pick up a victory here. And again, it's probably where Andrew was saying, where it felt a lot like with the WCW pay-per-view we talked about a while back. This just felt like something that could have been on Monday Night Raw or on Superstars. It didn't have the pay-per-view feel, even like the Razor, because you're putting Razor over. If you're going to put Kid over here, then I understand why you're doing this. But if you're going to put IRS over, which I don't even have a problem with you doing. If you're going to play the kid's the underdog and, he wins here and there, that's fine. But this doesn't feel like it needed to be a pay-per-view match here. It went 5 minutes and 44 seconds. And, again, not awful, not terrible, just a little out of place, Darin. And, I mean, don't love it, don't hate it. It just seems like a Raw match to me.
Yeah, I was actually caught off guard. Like, I didn't remember the match. And when I was watching it, I just assumed that the kid was going to win because he was kind of getting this little weird push now. So I don't remember what they do with IRS after this immediately. I don't remember if he got any kind of like a serious push. I know he ends up in an Intercontinental title match with Razor, I think, at the following Royal Rumble. So maybe he gets a little bit of a push after this, but I was surprised that the 1, 2, 3 kid lost.
I think because he's splitting. This is where they're splitting up now. So I guess maybe they're going to try to. And I will say the one thing they did, Vince did this a lot, and they built, like, they would say things like, IRS, one of the most capable wrestlers in the WWF. He could, they wouldn't act like he was a jobber.
Right.
And so maybe they did have some plans. It just, I don't know.
Yeah, on top of that, the match it's almost a squash. Like, he gets a couple of moves in, but that's pretty much it. I mean, the point of this match is to put over IRS and get him set up. So that kind of caught me off guard. Look, like you said, I mean, this match has a feel of a Raw filler superstar match. Not a pay-per-view match. And like I said, the finish kind of caught me off guard, to be honest.
I actually enjoyed this match.
Okay.
If you were to give me a choice of a number of different things that I could have taken off this pay-per-view, I wouldn't have taken this off. Because here's the thing. 1, 2, 3 kid at this point is just going so much faster than anyone else on the roster. It's not even funny. Everyone else looks like they're wearing cement shoes. And here comes the 1, 2, 3 kid, 21-year-old Sean Waltman, weighing maybe 160 pounds soaking wet, looking like a stiff breeze could knock him over. And he's flying around, bumping his butt off. This was a breath of fresh air. And for as much as we knock the IRS gimmick, for as much as we say he didn't win a whole heck of a lot in singles competition, the reason that he got some element of respect is because Mike Rotunda was a really good worker when he wanted to be. There were some matches that he worked as IRS, as Mike Rotunda, as any number of other people and gimmicks that he was part of, where he was actually pretty darn good in the ring. He was a good hand. They gave him this gimmick, and he wound up actually showing a little bit of range doing it. And now every once in a while, he'll show up on WWE television with the suspenders, the tie, and the briefcase. Everybody gets a good pop. You know what? There are worse legacies to have than that. And oh, by the way, Bray Wyatt's his kid. So there's that. Now, this match has another really good quote from Heenan that I'm surprised neither of you mentioned. IRS hits Kid with a really stiff shot. Heenan goes, he hit him so hard he knocked 3 zits off his cheek.
Oh, yeah.
I thought that was a really good line. Kid gets a couple of near falls. IRS gets what's known as the write-off out of nowhere for the pin, which I'll agree certainly looked out of nowhere. It looked as though they were allotted 8 minutes, and somebody told the referee, hey, we need to get these guys out of here, go home, and that's sort of what happened. Now, after the match comes the return, and thankfully this is the only time it happened on the entire show, of one of my least favorite things Bobby Heenan ever did, the brain scan with the telestrator.
Oh, God, it's so bad. It was just so forcing it.
Every time. I don't think there's ever been a good use of the brain scan at all, ever. It just seemed forced. It seemed like something extra, as if Vince said, you know what? Bobby Heenan's missing something.
Like Vince just watched a football game for the first time and saw John Madden doing it or something. You know what I mean? And it was like, oh, we've got to do that. And it was, Bobby doesn't like it. He doesn't really sell it, even anything that he's doing well. You could tell it feels forced. He does the brain scan to draw out the 1040. Is that what he does on this one?
Something like that. Yeah.
So just one of from a guy who has a lot of hits. You're gonna have some misses, and the brain scan was definitely one of them. We get to Todd Pettengill, who's talking with Bruce Hart and Owen, who give an update on their family. And I mean, crazy, Darin, where Owen is a year later.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. And this is the start for him of getting really, because this is what Brett had said. All of this King storyline and getting the family involved was Brett's way of trying to get Owen into the mix. You know, this is what Brett wanted. He wanted Owen to be in the mix. He knew how good Owen was, and he wanted him to get a shot. And he kind of assumed at this point, you know what, maybe the best way is even if I have to get involved. And so you get Owen and Bruce here talking, and I think there was also some plans of Vince liking Bruce more than Owen initially, but Owen was just a much, much better worker, incredible worker here. So, a year later, he's main eventing in that steel cage match with Brett for the title. And right here, he's just guy in the crowd.
Yeah, he actually opened the show with a dark match, beating Barry Horowitz too. Mm-hmm. So it's amazing if you think about it. 93 dark match against Barry Horowitz, 94 in the main event in a steel cage for the title with Brother Brett. You talk about going, from one end of the spectrum to the other in a 365-day period. So for me, this part of the show really pisses me off. And it pisses me off because you know what you're supposed to have in this show. And this is what you get. Brett's supposed to be in the main event in a quote-unquote dream match with Hogan. But because Hogan refused to drop the belt to Brett, not only refused to drop the belt, but mainly because he didn't want to lose clean to Brett. Because, quote-unquote, from Hogan, wasn't his time yet, brother. We end up with Brett and Doink and Brett and Jerry Lawler. And I'm sorry, but listen, if you go through this entire card, Brett's getting the biggest reaction of the night, and he's fighting Doink and Jerry Lawler. What does that tell you? I mean, it's wild that this is the only thing that you can come up with for the guy who was supposed to be in the main event. Look, that being said, with Brett, the consummate professional, you'll never know how pissed off he was that this is what was going on. And yes, this does get Owen involved and sets up the Survivor Series and the eventual Brett Owen, back and forth and the stuff that goes on at the Rumble and off to the races we go. But I couldn't even watch this and enjoy it, even if it was good, even enjoying, just watching Brett, because this is just so stupid that this is, one of your big pay-per-views of the year, and you have the guy that's going to be the face of your company for the next 4 years going up against a clown and a washed-up has-been at this point of his career. So, yeah, I mean, this is one of the reasons why this pay-per-view sucks, to be honest with you. And this is the political nonsense that Hogan caused, in that the guy who is 10 times the wrestler of Hogan is stuck in the middle of a card fighting a clown and a self-proclaimed king.
Darin, for Christmas, I'm getting you the Thunder in Paradise DVD box set. I hope you enjoy it, buddy.
Oh, yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, listen, I mean, but that's what it is. And it's unfortunate that's what this pay-per-view ends up, being about, looking back on it. It's what it should have been and what it was instead. And that leads to a disaster of a main event that we'll talk about later. But, yeah, I mean, this is just weird nonsense and – I really don't know what else to say about it.
Yeah. Now, here we run into where you start to find places to cut things so as to make for a smoother show. I wish I had clocked this. I really wish that I had, because Jerry Lawler seems to take about 20 minutes hobbling through the curtain, going down to ringside on crutches, and cutting the promo that he cuts. It is not a bad promo. It's just a 2-minute promo that's stretched out to 4 or 5 minutes. Now, Doink comes out after that as the, quote, court jester. Okay, so the court jester is supposed to be something he laughs at, nobody takes seriously, whatever. If that's the case, why is Doink the Clown getting 2/3 of the offense against Bret Hart in this match? It is bonkers. It is backwards. And we're supposed to care about this. Why? Because Doink threw a bucket of water on Bruce Hart at ringside? Just, no. This didn't work at all whatsoever. The only way this could have worked is if Doink comes in and Bret kills him. Like, minute and a half, put him in the sharpshooter, then you do the thing with Lawler coming in, and that's where we wind up getting the good part of this whole thing. The problem is, this was stretched to 20. You could have done it in 10.
Yeah, we'll start getting through this. So it takes a while for Bret to get out immediately, and Bobby calls him a chicken. And Bret looks pissed. Darin said this too. This is not the title coronation he was promised back when they took the title off at Mania. Bobby is ripping on Stu and Helen, as you could imagine. And then Jerry's music plays. He comes out on the crutches and, as Andrew said, just takes forever. And Bobby said, I knew about this earlier, but I didn't want to say anything. And Lawler slowly comes down the aisle, making faces as he does. Said this was going to be the biggest night of his entire life. He hates Bret Hart and his father and his brothers and the family. And he gives a big story about arriving in this stinking city of Detroit. And he went to rent a car and got the limousine, and the brakes didn't work and the airbag didn't work. And a little old lady pulled out in front of him and caused a 10-car pileup. And he had to pull himself out of the fiery wreckage, and nurses wanted to get him to the hospital. But being the king that he is, he said nothing will keep him from Bret Hart. And he hobbled here on one leg with the doctors in the back will not let him participate in any wrestling event tonight. He calls Bret a coward and is going to let Bret get a beating from his court jester Doink. As Andrew had mentioned, Doink comes out with the 2 buckets, one with confetti. He tosses on the kids. He tosses water on the Bruce Hart. And then Bret goes to work on Doink. Bobby's now saying that he saw the car accident and that Jerry is a hero. What a man. And this is just all Bret early. Vince says that Bret's been waiting since June 13th to get a match with Jerry the King, and Owen's screaming in the background. Vince says that Owen and Bruce and Stu and the whole family is angry. And Bobby says, wouldn't you be angry if Bret was your son? Which was kind of funny and quick. Bret goes after Jerry, but just Doink comes from behind and now has the advantage. Doink locks in a submission while he's holding the ropes. He misses off the top, and Bret starts to set up his sequence, locks in the sharpshooter. All he does, Vince says, if anybody can get out of the sharpshooter, it's Doink. Really? Really? Jerry comes in with a crutch, and he hits Bret in the back with the while the sharpshooter's locked in. So you get a DQ. Bobby says it's a miracle. He can walk. So Vince keeps calling this a ripoff. Jerry and Doink walk back down the aisle after beating on Bret for a little while, and Jack Tunney comes out. Officials all over. They're holding Bret back. Jack tells Fink that if Jerry doesn't come to the ring, he will be banned from the WWF for good. So now we get Jerry versus Bret. Bret lays in some punches and leads Jerry back to the ring. Bret, the bell rings. The crowd's loving this, though. I mean, I will say, this just feels like Jerry Lawler Memphis stuff. That's the problem. This isn't 1993 stuff. This is stuff that was like 85, 10 years ago stuff. It just felt very not and live crowd, not stuff that plays that well on TV. You know, that's another thing here. This shtick is great to live audiences, but it's not as good in a TV sense product like we're seeing here. So, you know, Vince says that Lawler obviously hates the Hart family, and Bobby cuts in. Well, who doesn't? Jerry's choking out Bret with a crutch. Lawler crotches Bret on the ring post. Bret is out in the ring. He hits Bret in the throat with the crutch. Bret with a back heel low blow, and then Bret's back in charge. Lawler tries to beg off. Bret lowers the straps himself, hits a pile driver, elbow off the second rope, pile driver, which was, you know, Jerry's move, and he hits the sharpshooter. Lawler gives up after 10 seconds, but Bret will not let go, DZ. The bell keeps ringing. The officials try to get him off. This thing, there are 3 officials, 4 officials, 5 officials, bunch of executives, 10 people in the ring can't get Bret to let go. It actually takes 3 minutes and 30 seconds before Bret finally lets go of the hold.
Yep, and that's how you end up with the disqualification of Bret and pronouncing Jerry the King Lawler as the undisputed king of the World Wrestling Federation, and Lawler gets stretchered out of there while holding one finger up in the air as he's on a gurney in triumph to end this fantastic array of wrestling bravado to wrap up an all-time wonderful segment of SummerSlam in which Bret Hart had to beat a king and a clown, in which he ended up being disqualified anyway. Look, yeah, I mean, like you said, the Doink getting in 6 minutes of offense on Bret was weird. Bret getting disqualified here after the match, okay. I guess that sets up the match at the Survivor Series with the Bret family and the Royals. I guess this kind of keeps the thing going on a little bit, because at this point you got nothing for Bret because you screwed him over. So you got to do something to stretch out the time. So I guess we're just gonna let him keep having a feud with a self-proclaimed king that hasn't really had a serious wrestling career in about 10 years. But I mean, look, you get Bruce involved, you get Owen involved. It leads to Owen getting a push, which is the silver lining in all of this, I suppose. But this just encapsulates a really weird time in WWE.
Darin, are you there?
Oh yeah, you don't hear me?
Did we lose Darin?
No, I got DZ. You got.
Did we lose me?
Oh, Andrew, can you hear
I feel
us?
as though we've lost someone.
Hold on. Let's see this for a second. Hold on 1 second, Andrew. So you can't hear me, Andrew.
What the hell was that?
Are you good?
I hang on. It's a little choppy, but I can hear you.
Okay. There was
Now
one
I
moment.
can't hear a thing.
Okay, there was. That's so great. This is hilarious. And I'm gonna leave this in too because I like this. This is definitely gonna be left in. There was
What
a moment.
happened?
I don't know. There was one moment earlier where you were a little cutting in and out, but it probably missed like one word that you said. Nothing big. But can you hear us now?
Now I can hear you. Yes.
Okay.
I'm not redoing that whole thing.
No, definitely not.
Andrew, this shit sucks. Take it over.
That was hilarious. So go ahead, Andrew.
Okay, so I don't know how this is going to sound in post-production, but to those of you out there in podcast land, what happened was, in the words of Bobby Heenan, my monitor went black. Everything wound up just sounding incredibly slow. Darin basically sounded like he was on Quaaludes. I had no idea what Darin said, so I'm just going to assume, just for the moment, that Darin said, "This is all Hulk Hogan's fault. I hated it."
So we are back. That was hilarious. We were having some technical difficulties for
Does somebody want to tell me what the hell happened?
Andrew was talking. He was cutting it out. We know Darin and I were laughing. It was hilarious. But we were into basically Andrew giving his thoughts on the fiasco that was Bret Hart versus Doink, and then Bret versus Jerry the King. That again, it's, we got some really great talent and great performers on this show, Andrew, but they're just in spots, that we look back and scratch our head when we've got Yokozuna going 17 minutes in the main event with Luger that are two of you're ranking the workers on this card. There are 5 or 6 that you'd stack at least above Luger and Yokozuna, also big man who can sort of move, but you're never going to confuse him with a good worker. It just is it's such a shame, especially, for someone like me who's a huge Bret Hart fan. I know Darin too, to see him in this spot here when we know what he could have and should have been doing.
You know what it's like? It's like if you have an A-list podcast personality and you let him go on a rant for 3 minutes and you don't hit the record button.
It was going in and out. It was in and out.
I'm going to try my hardest to try to replicate everything I just said. For those of you out in podcast land, and yes, I'm checking now because I am seeing we are recording, I'm going to try to do this verbatim. So you get Bret and Jerry Lawler, and for what this is, it's fine. You get top-notch angle advancement. The problem is, this is SummerSlam. This is one of the 4 biggest shows of the entire year.
And the second biggest match that you've been booking on this show, and the third biggest match you've been booking on the show, like the IC title match, or I guess the top 4. Let's say those 2 and the Undertaker match. You did the same thing in the IC title match. It felt like it was the starting point and not a finishing point.
Yeah, and yes, Jerry Lawler doing the thing at the end where he gets stretchered off, holds the one finger in the air, and you get Bobby Heenan going, "God save the king." That's hysterical. And The Rock would rip that off at WrestleMania 5 years later for the match with Shamrock, where, by the way, they did the exact same finish. Shamrock gets the submission, doesn't break the hold, decision gets reversed, Rock gets stretchered off, Rock holds the title up in the air, he's number 1. Gee, you really think that was a fresh idea? Here's where it started. Jerry Lawler is an expert in heel psychology. There are some times where his in-ring work is a little dodgy and doesn't necessarily mesh right with his opponent. Here it was fine, and you get Lawler being the smarmy heel that everybody wants to punch. My big problem with this is, between all of the pre-match stuff with Lawler hobbling out, Bret against Doink, and Bret against Lawler, that's 20 to 25 minutes. You could have done this in half the time, and it would have been just as effective, maybe even more so. That's my big problem with this. And now, hopefully, I'm really, really hoping that all of the technical issues are a thing of the past, or if there are further technical issues, it comes out, let's see, 2 matches down the list.
So you could at least say to this point that there were some things that we were disappointed in, Shawn Michaels, Mr. Perfect, all of Bret Hart's involvement here, IRS 123 kid maybe doesn't need to be on the show. But you wouldn't really have looked at anything here and said, this was so bad I got to change the channel. You just wouldn't have looked at anything there that said it was really good. You had the opening 2 matches that were fine, maybe average and then slightly above average after that. It was here in the next 2 matches, really, and the way they are carded back to back, and then the next 3 out of the 4 matches, really, because there's one in the middle of them that I don't mind, but we get Ludwig Borga here, and this is Ludwig Borga out on the streets in a rundown area. He calls out Lex Luger. He says, "This is what you're proud of. I bet the Lex Express never stopped here." He mentions, wow, it's like check the boxes of all the cliches. Welfare checks, high school dropouts, so-called land of opportunities. And it's, again, you're watching this. This is like what they would do with Hogan. You could tell that he's being built as the next challenger. You just didn't put the title on the guy, Luger. It doesn't make, again, like when you see Ludwig Borga here, and the only reason why he's here is this anti-American guy to be a next challenger for Luger, it makes even less sense that Luger's not winning the title at the end, where you've got this guy they're already building. And it's just another head scratcher about everything going on at this show. And we get a big pop from Marty Jannetty. former IC champ, out to the Rockers music. Ludwig Borga is undefeated. Quickly, Marty turns his back on Borga, who immediately attacks. And it just, this match goes by, it ends up going 5 minutes and 15 seconds. It is so slow, so bad. I will say this. Ludwig look like himself. He looks like a tough guy. Like, he looks like a guy you wouldn't want to, get into it with. But as soon as he gets into the ring, it's slow, it's plodding. It just, you get a small flurry from Marty, I think twice, and then that immediately gets quashed by Borga. Another small comeback, boom, immediately uses the power again. It's just slow as hell all around. This is, again, to me, like we're watching the Brett and Lawler stuff that felt like that was something that should have been done, in Memphis a decade before with Jerry. This felt like something that Vince would have been doing, in the late 80s with Hogan. It just felt out of place. And I don't mind it if you're going to go with it and have him be the guy for Luger, which you never do. So altogether, this just bothers me because he's bad in the ring. It didn't ever end up going anywhere. And apparently backstage, he was a pretty miserable prick also. And just like not a guy that was like a very nice guy and and just like a good guy to have in the locker room. So I don't have a whole lot of good to say about this match, DZ.
No, you want some interesting stuff on Ludwig Borga, whose real name was Tony Halme. He actually raced. Well, I'm in horse racing mode.
I always do that. I always do that.
Yeah, he actually wrestled over in Japan, in New Japan. Had matches with Barry Windham and Bam Bam Bigelow over there. He was even involved in a bit of a feud with the Hellraisers, which was the makeshift Legion of Doom when Hawk kind of went AWOL from WWF, and you had that whole Warrior Hawk and Power Warrior gimmick, and he was even involved in another thing with Ron Simmons. So he actually had some matches with some pretty high-profile guys. Came over here, and you could tell he was a big guy that McMahon was going to try to push. And like you said, you get everything here with the promo going into the match, where it looks like this is going to be, the next big thing to face Luger, who's presumptively going to win the title, except Luger doesn't win the belt. And when you go back and you realize that Luger was going to win the belt until a point in time very shortly before the pay-per-view. We don't know if it was day of, if it was that weekend, but we know based on what we've heard come out of a lot of people's takes and revisionist history of what transpired, that the plan was for Luger to win the belt at SummerSlam for a long time. And then Vince changed his mind at the last minute. Now, again, when the last minute was, we don't know. And perhaps this Ludwig Borga promo was filmed at a time that Luger was still supposed to be winning the belt, which then it would make a lot more sense. And they just decided to keep the feud going and not cut the promo. The match is awful. These two have styles that just don't work together at all. It ends in a submission move, a torture rack by Borga. This guy... Which
is hilarious because that's Luger's move.
Yeah.
In WCW that he never ended up using in WWF, which I thought was kind of a little funny thing too.
Yeah, and we've talked about that before. Why couldn't Luger use the torture rack in WWE? And then this guy shows up and uses the torture rack. He goes into a feud with Luger, and there's going to be some stuff that goes on with Tatanka. He actually ends Tatanka's undefeated streak of 2 years that fall to kind of keep his thing going. He mocked the whole Luger narcissist thing, and there's a lot of stuff that goes on with Borga, and then he ends up hurting his ankle in a match with Rick Steiner, and everything with him goes out the window, and he leaves the company probably about 9 months after he debuted. So he was in there for a hot minute, and the feud with Luger never materialized. So Ludwig Borga, everything about him, including this match, is pretty awful from start to finish.
So they tried to paint Ludwig Borga as this monster, which, if you're in promo mode, works fine. Then you put him in the ring with somebody and you realize he's 6'2", which is in no way monster build, monster height, whatever. He's just another guy. The other thing that I didn't particularly care for, and there's a bigger example of this later on in the show, there was a big anti-American slant with Borga, whatever. He obviously does not respect America, says Vince. He's billed as being from Helsinki, Finland. Last I checked, America and Finland, maybe they weren't exactly best friends, but they were pretty tight. I mean, they would see each other at, NATO and be able to, converse with one another. It's not as though it was the country next door. Gee, if only there was a big, huge country next door that would be a convenient place for Ludwig freaking Borga to be from, that would make sense as far as an anti-American slant is concerned. That doesn't really exist, and there's no way they would ever do anything like meddle in presidential elections or anything like that. Political commentary aside, this match sucked. Marty Jannetty did everything he possibly could to sell for Ludwig Borga, but if you put lipstick on a pig, it's still a pig. And this wasn't good. I don't know what they ever saw in this gimmick. The guy may have had potentially threw decent punches, that's for sure. That's more than a lot of other big guys on the roster have. More on one of them in just a little bit. That's called foreshadowing, kids. But this match stunk. If there's a silver lining in any of this, it's that, Darin, I heard you loud and clear.
and what makes it even worse is the placement on the card. I mean, this is just another squash. Again, something they want to get him on the pay-per-view for sure. This is just another thing you could have done on Raw. But I understand, that's fine. You want to get him on the pay-per-view and stuff, but this is just awful. We get an ad for 93 Survivor Series back when it used to be Thanksgiving Eve, which I'm actually surprised they haven't done that now with the network. They don't need to do a pay-per-view on Sunday like they used to. They could have kind of a fun Wednesday night show and do kind of an old school throwback with some tag team. The problem with the Survivor Series nowadays, and a little bit of a tangent, is that they just don't feel like there are enough stakes. They did some kind of a thing where the survivors are or like they did maybe the Soul Survivor match, somebody wins or the winners get a title shot. Anything to make it seem a little more stakes, to just kind of feel like tag matches that we see on Raw and SmackDown all the time. But I did like it when they used to do it on the Wednesday night before. There's always Thanksgiving and the Christmas holidays right around then were always huge traditional wrestling holidays back in the day. So this match next, we get the Rest in Peace match. It's a no disqualification must be a winner match, which is hilarious because The Undertaker never does anything remotely that he could have gotten disqualified for. Doesn't use any weapons, does nothing. And what sucks for The Undertaker in this particular match is that he can't do a tombstone on Giant Gonzalez. He can't really do anything to Giant Gonzalez because the guy can't take a bump. He is one of the worst workers you will ever see. And it's funny that he's placed after Ludwig because Ludwig was pretty bad in his WWF run, as Darin had mentioned. And this Giant Gonzalez was just abysmal. So Giant Gonzo comes down with Harvey Whippleman holding the urn. They've stole it from The Undertaker and Paul Bearer. And Gonzalez is in that bodysuit, which is horrible. He was a big, skinny guy, and he didn't really look imposing. He would just look tall and skinny. So they threw this airbrushed muscle sort of spandex on him, full bodysuit that just looked horrible. At least at this point, they had gotten rid of the body fur that he had when he initially debuted. Like the hair, like he was like some sort of a gorilla. And Vince says that he stole the urn, and Bobby says, no, he earned it, which was just like bad dad joke here. Big pop for Taker's music. And Darin said we get the two biggest pops of the night. And not that the crowd wasn't into Lex. They were fine with Lex. But the two biggest stars of the night are Brett and Undertaker. And it's like, what are you doing with these guys that have been around for you for a few years and are obviously super over and could very easily be in main event spots for you? You're creating this Lex guy who was a heel two months ago. You haven't given him any time to build. Any time to really marinate and really let people get behind him. You sort of fast track this because Hogan left, and we got Yoko in the mix. It just, so here's Taker, and he goes right after Gonzalez. You get the long Undertaker entrance, and he walks down the aisle alone with no Paul Bearer. He raises the lights, goes right after Giant Gonzalez, choking him, and then Harvey Whippleman distracts the Undertaker. Giant Gonzalez gets control. Some of his slow, awful-looking, horrendous-looking punches. I mean, he cannot move at all. Taker hits him, and he just wobbles, but he doesn't fall. Taker gets knocked down, but he ends up sitting up. And he's having to bump and throw himself all over the place because Gonzalez, not only can he not bump, he can't dish out any offense either. He can't dish out anything that looks imposing whatsoever. He grabs the chair, gives a couple of weak chair shots to Taker's back. Undertaker's down outside, and then Giant Gonzalez tosses him into the ring steps. Undertaker's reaching out for the urn, and Giant Gonzalez is working on him slowly for over 5 minutes. And then, thank goodness that the Undertaker's music hits, and here comes Paul Bearer with a black wreath. Harvey Whippleman takes off his jacket, and these two are about to brawl. Harvey runs at Paul Bearer, who gives him a clothesline, lays him out. Then Paul walks over and grabs the urn, and that's when things start to turn for the Taker. I mean, Giant Gonzalez can't even do a basic body slam. He drops Undertaker on his legs. He doesn't even slam him on his back. He slams him on his legs. He looks all over and Paul Bearer has the urn, and he holds it up, and then the Undertaker sits up. Here comes the dead man. Taker with 5 clotheslines. Giant Gonzalez falls down to one knee. The Undertaker gets up to the top rope, flying clothesline. That's it for the win. That's it. That's all they could do. When you look back and you wonder why. Why is that it? Why aren't they doing more? This guy couldn't do anything else. I mean, I think they probably could have had Undertaker use some weapons, give me a chair shot, a couple other things than this flying clothesline, which he used a couple times, I think, against big men that he couldn't get up for, or they weren't able to take the pile driver, the tombstone. This was just, I mean, you feel bad, Darin, for the Undertaker here, because there's nothing this guy can do. There's absolutely nothing you can do with this guy. And he's trying. This is one of the first times we're seeing him really get, like, Undertaker throwing his body around because he has no choice. He has to try to bump.
You know you're in trouble when the best move in a match is a clothesline delivered by Paul Bearer to Harvey Whippleman on the outside.
You're right.
Look, so Giant Gonzalez, to give you some background, because there's no point in really talking about the match. Giant Gonzalez was an Argentinian basketball player who was actually drafted in the 3rd round of the 1988 NBA draft by the Atlanta Hawks. But he was legitimately 7 feet 7 inches tall. Mm-hmm. He had serious knee injuries, serious ankle issues, and he could not play basketball in the NBA despite being on the Argentinian national team, which is why he got drafted. So who is the owner of the Atlanta Hawks that drafted Jorge Gonzalez? That would be one Ted Turner, who in turn then gave him a job in WCW as a wrestler known as El Gigante. He actually was a wrestler in WCW for nearly 3 years. Mm-hmm. And he even had a long feud with, wait for it,
Flair! With Ric frickin' Flair!
In the WCW Heavyweight Championship picture. He actually participated in the infamous Chamber of Horrors match at Halloween Havoc 1991 and had feuds with a bunch of other guys that are fairly big names that you would know about. How that ever happened when you watch this guy in the ring, you don't know. And the real sad thing for me, it couldn't have really put a bow on this particular feud and match any better. This ends with an attempt at a face turn by Giant Gonzalez getting in the face of Harvey Whippleman, choking him, and then hitting him with a choke slam. Now, this guy, Giant Gonzalez, probably weighs somewhere in the neighborhood of 375 pounds just because he's 7 feet 7 inches tall. Harvey Whippleman might weigh $130. I could choke slam Harvey Whippleman with my left hand because he's that small. Now, granted, when you choke slam somebody, you do need some help because the guy has to do something the guy that's being choke slammed has to do something that's called post. And by posting, it means that their hand will be on the other person's shoulder, and when they get lifted up, they help in the lift by using that hand to kind of straighten the arm out and get the most height out of the choke slam that they can get. Harvey's not going to post too well. That being said, he still weighs 130 pounds. He couldn't even get him off the ground. It was the weakest and lowest choke slam you've ever seen in your life. Now, I mean, how anybody ever saw this guy and not only thought that they could do something with him, but thought that the idea was to put him in a feud with The Undertaker right out of the gate. This was going to be your big thing for The Undertaker in 1993. It boggles the mind how sometimes these guys have great ideas, great returns of wrestlers, great debuts of wrestlers like Chris Jericho and Sting and the stuff that they've done. And then at the same time, they can come up with this nonsense. It just blows me away. It is Giant Gonzalez, in my opinion, with the exception of the gobbledygook turkey thing at Survivor Series, is probably the single worst thing that Vince McMahon has ever come up with.
Yep. And Andrew, before just to kind of set the scene for following, as Darin was mentioning about that face turn. So they were going to have I guess it looked like they were going to have a feud with Adam Baum, who was a Whippleman's other guy. That never really happened. And he was in a battle royal that was for the Intercontinental Championship on Monday Night Raw. They all teamed up to eliminate him right away. And then that was it. He was gone in October. So this was really his last big moment. It was just so weird to see the face turn because that seemed like a weird place for it too. When this has been the guy that was evil. He used chloroform on The Undertaker in storyline, in kayfabe. He's been this a miserable guy. Why do you want to give him any moment at the end at all? Period. This should have just been, The Undertaker's moment to end the feud and move on. Andrew, I'm sure you loved this match.
I'm going to take what Darin said, and I'm going to put a little bit of a spin on it. Poor Giant Gonzalez for a lot of reasons. So he plays basketball for the Argentinian national team. I had a fair amount of research done on this. Darin took about 2/3 of my stuff. But he does that, gets drafted by the Atlanta Hawks. Well, his body betrays him and he can't play basketball. So what's he going to do? Winds up getting a job as a professional wrestler. And look, if you're Giant Gonzalez in that situation, for one, your time as a top-end athlete is incredibly limited because of your size and because at some point your body is going to betray you, and unfortunately you're probably going to die pretty badly, as most people that size generally do. He winds up getting the job with WCW, and Darin, to answer your question as far as why they could possibly allow El Gigante to be a main event player, Darin, I have 2 words for you. Jim Herd. That was the reign of Jim Herd, a.k.a. the Pizza King, and that very nearly killed WCW because he was the guy that wanted to take Ric Flair, have him pierce his ear, cut his hair, and call him Spartacus. That was one of the ideas of one Jim Herd. We could have an entire podcast talking about the ideas of Jim Herd and how Jim Herd almost single-handedly killed WCW and how it took the arrival of Hulk Hogan 3 years after he was gone to revive WCW. However, we're going to talk about Giant Gonzalez here because for as much of a real-life sympathetic figure as he was, for as much as he probably deserves better treatment by wrestling fans, because look, this was a guy who needed a job in the worst way possible, and it wasn't his fault that he got put in that position. What was he supposed to do? Say no to Ted Turner? That just wasn't going to happen. So he winds up being a professional wrestler for a couple of years. And it's not pretty. El Gigante was bad. Giant Gonzalez was 10 times worse. You have The Undertaker, not exactly in worker mode yet, as he would be 10, 15 years later. This was a guy who, whenever he left his feet, it was shocking. That's how he was still being booked. You bring in Giant Gonzalez. You have arguably the worst WrestleMania match in the history of that pay-per-view. And then you get this, which the only compliment I can pay it is, it's better than the WrestleMania match. So Taker comes out, gets the Giant, bell rings. A minute in, nobody cares. The crowd is dead. Absolutely stark raving dead. A couple minutes later, has the upper hand, they're stumbling around. Gong! And you hear on the announcer, the announcer's booth saying, oh, there must have been a music malfunction. Nope, it's Paul Bearer. It was a huge pop.
Yeah.
That was fun. I enjoyed that. He comes down with the stupid wreath. He lays the stupid wreath at ringside. Harvey Whippleman takes off his stupid jacket and takes his stupid clothes. And you know what? It was stupid, but it was fun. At the very least, we finally
it was like the highlight of the match, just like Darin said.
Match.
Yeah.
And then Paul Bearer gets the urn. Taker does the sit-up. He does the one move he can do on Giant Gonzalez. Wham, bam, we're done. Thank goodness that's over. I never want to have to watch that match again. But at any rate, Gonzalez doesn't exactly get the best shake with wrestling fans. Yes, he was horrible, but when you're put in that kind of a position where you only have a certain window of time to make money off of your incredible size, I can't say I'd have handled it much differently than he did. He just got put in one horrible situation after another, and unfortunately he did wind up dying very badly of diabetes back in 2010, so not exactly the happiest story there, but you guys are right. This feud, unwatchable. Some of the worst stuff Undertaker ever did.
Yeah, it's just unfortunate here. Giant Gonzalez and The Undertaker. This is done, at least. Joe is backstage with Yokozuna, Jim Cornette, and Mr. Fuji. And Cornette says, let me tell you something, hatchet head. You need to sit down, take a Valium, and just listen to what I've got to say. And then Jim goes off on a rant. It was a pretty good promo, though. He talks about how the Heavenly Bodies got ripped off, and then he changes the topic to Yokozuna. And what I like what they did here production-wise, as Jim was talking about Yokozuna, they get the close-up of Yoko's stare in his face, which made him look imposing and evil. And then they widen the shot back, and Jim continues cutting the Good Hill promo on Lex. He says, the last thing you're going to hear tonight is Yoko saying, and then Yoko says, Bonsai! So, yeah, not bad. I mean, basic heel Cornette promo stuff, but it was solid, pretty good. And then DZ, you know what? This next match was fine. I didn't have a problem with the Smoking Guns, Tatanka versus Bam Bam and the Head Shrinkers. There was a 6-man tag. These guys can all work pretty well. And it was, exactly what you would expect from a 6-man tag like this. In and out pretty quick early. Then there's a spot for about 5 minutes. The heels isolate one of the baby faces. They start to slow it down. Then you're going to get the spots where everybody's in the ring and things go crazy. And it's, you get the 3-on-1 with the heels working on the baby face. And the crowd was hot for this. It was fine. And Darin, I think what ends up happening is this match is okay. It feels like incredible because what it comes after. It comes after the Borga, Marty Jannetty, and then it comes after Undertaker, Giant Gonzalez. So you've got about 20 minutes of absolute crap. And even right before that, you've got the Lawler Brett stuff, which isn't like an in-ring classic. It's just more about storyline moving forward. So you got a lot of crap leading up to this. And then you got this match where, it's actually a match where guys are working, moving, can do legitimate moves, tagging in and out, and it's just, to me, average to above average 6-man tag match.
Yeah, I don't know if it was just because of its placement in the card and what it was surrounded by. For my money, I actually thought this was the best wrestling match of the card.
It might have been. It might have been. Yeah, I had a lot of fun with this.
And listen, like I said, it could be because of what it was surrounded by. That maybe it made it seem better than it was, but I thought these guys worked their asses off, and I thought it was a really good match. I thought Bam Bam Bigelow for all the things that were lousy in 1993, you can make an argument that Bam Bam Bigelow was one of WWE's star performers that year.
MVPs.
Yeah, I really thought his run at King of the Ring was excellent. His match with Brett, I thought, was fantastic in the King of the Ring final. He's really, really active in this match, showing off why he's one of the most, agile big men that we see in WWE. You have two soon to be or will become tag champions in the Smoking Guns and the Head Shrinkers in there. You have Tatanka, who's still in the midst of his undefeated streak. He gets most of the positive looks from the standpoint of, being on the side of the face, gets the big comeback, kind of winning thing at the end. I thought that the Head Shrinkers and the Guns kind of took a step forward here from where they were. And I thought this match might have showed that off a little bit and would lead to some better days down the road for them. It was an unexpectedly good match for me. I didn't remember it.
I agree.
But I thought, again, maybe compared to the rest of the card, thought it was a highly entertaining match.
I'm going to go a step further, Darin. I'm going to offer a bold proclamation. There are 6 guys in this match. Bart Gunn, Billy Gunn, Tatanka, Fatu, Samu, Bam Bam Bigelow. I think this was the best match any of them ever had. Okay. I have this as a legitimate 4-star match. All 6 guys brought it. Bam Bam is flying around the ring. He's a legit 350 pounds, and he's flying out there like he's 210, 220. He takes a backdrop early in the match. He takes a couple of really cool bumps into the ring post. They do a triple headbutt spot off the top turnbuckle that misses. Tatanka winds up getting the roll-up. There's a fantastic spot where Bart Gunn tries to ram Fatu's head into the canvas, except one problem, wrestling history experts. You can't hit a Samoan in the head.
Nope.
So that backfires hysterically. Fatu springs up and hits a clothesline. Bart does the flip cell for it. I loved this match. And maybe some of me loving this match as opposed to really liking it is because the back half of this card is so lousy. But on its own, I still think this is a legitimate 4-star match, and I'd be hard-pressed to find anything else that any of the other 6 guys ever did. Bam Bam had a couple of 3.5-star matches with Brett that were at least somewhat close. He had the match with Lawrence Taylor that was way better than it had any right to be, but I still stand by it. This was a really good 6-man match. For me, it was the highlight of the card, and it wound up soothing some ills from the 2 previous matches. Unfortunately, the booking of the last one would sort of take the Band-Aid, rip it off, and pour salt into the wound.
At this time, for about, late 80s till mid 90s, WWF did a really good job with situations like this where we had seen and we were going to see this really long Tatanka Bam Bam, feud. And we saw a bunch of Tatanka Bam Bam matches. We would see a bunch of Smoking Guns Head Shrinker stuff. But this was a case when by making this a 6-man, it made it so much better. We didn't have to we got to get all the good stuff in 11 minutes instead of 2 10-minute matches with these two or 2 8-minute matches that would have had – it just would have been not as good. We wouldn't have gotten the in and out. We wouldn't have gotten the quick spots. The pace wouldn't have been as quick for either of them. There would have been more slow down spots. We've talked about that a lot in Tatanka's matches. He got to be at a quick pace in here because he didn't have to worry about that 5 or 6 minutes in the middle where, I'm going to have to slow things down a little bit and get in these rest holds because I'm going to have my little build-up spot again at the end. You don't have to worry about that in a 6-man tag. I love some of these 6-mans or some of the most surprising matches when we look back on shows a lot of times because everybody knows going in, okay, cool, I'm going to have my 4 minutes in the ring. I'm just going to go bonkers when I'm in there. And I don't have to worry about holding back whatsoever. And thank goodness we got this match in between this, 4 final matches on the card. And there were some funny things early on. So, you've got the Smoking Guns, who are the Cowboys, and Tatanka, who's the Indian, the Native American, and Bobby says it's just like the Dallas Cowboys and the Cleveland Indians. They're not winners, which I thought was funny. Tatanka and Bam going at it early, and then just quick tags in and out. Everybody's getting their moments. The Billy Gunn looks good. It's like a face buster early on, and then they slow it down. They isolate Bart for about 5 minutes. Bam Bam misses a splash, then Bart tags Tatanka, who comes in, House of Fire, big crossbody off the top rope for 2. Samu's supposed to break up the pin, but he's late. So the ref has to kind of pause. There's like one sort of botch where he has to kind of stop for a second. But they pick right back up. Bam Bam hits a ghetto blaster, double kick to the back of Tatanka's head. Then things get crazy. Everybody's in the ring. And I mean, the crowd was really hot. I completely agree with you guys. I really enjoyed it. And it was much needed towards the back end of a show that was really struggling. Joe Fowler is out with Hank Carter, the bus driver of the Lex Express. This guy talks about some of the memories on the road. He bumbles through some of his words. And, Joe, this is another situation where this is hard, where you put him in a spot where this guy can't talk very well. And I thought Joe did a decent job just trying to get something out of him. And he said, this is probably the easiest question or the dumbest question I've ever asked. Who do you think's going to win tonight in the main event? And, he's obviously said Lex. And then before we get in the main event, we'll mention
point of order before we move
Go
on.
ahead. Please do.
I just want to say something. They couldn't have gotten him a ticket in the arena. They had to keep him out by the bus. Come on.
Watching on his little TV or whatever it is.
Yeah.
He couldn't be backstage even. You know what I mean? Just watching on a monitor from there, anything at all. Todd's now in the crowd talking with random fan Bruce, who is draped in red, white, and blue sheets, or maybe even drapes. He mentions, that he went to, I think, some sort of a store to get these, and he's just decked out in the red, white, and blue, completely going absolutely crazy.
I actually saw Bruce at a Trump rally in Tallahassee.
That's so great. Yeah, that's him. All right. That's Bruce. Then it's main event time. And again, I said this at the beginning. They make the main event feel like a big match. It actually sort of, the way they're setting it up, it feels like a WrestleMania main event even. There were a few things I thought were strange, though. Okay, we get no video package at all. So think about where we are in the timeline of the WWE year. 1993, we're at SummerSlam. The pay-per-view before this, Lex Luger is the narcissist. We don't, and obviously he goes through the transformation, July 4th, the slam on the USS Intrepid, and then stuff on Raw. Why don't we get any of that here? WWF is so, at this point, and WWE now, they were really good with their packages, even at this point when they weren't as good as they are now, at least letting us know, giving us some backstory, building it up. Hell, some of those older ones with Hogan's, they would go 15 minutes showing you a package, building everything up, all the Saturday night's main events. We get none of that here. Could you imagine if you were just somebody who was watching pay-per-views and the month or 2 months before, you're watching the narcissist get eliminated in the first round of the King of the Ring in a time limit draw, and then this is the guy in the main event here? We get nothing, none of how he transforms, which we get that video package after, which is bizarre. Why don't we get that video package of him doing the Lex Express on the road right now? Right now. This is when it's supposed to be.
Did somebody forget to push play?
Right? I mean, really, it was almost like, what? Where is the part of him slamming Yoko on the 4th? How he became Mr. Babyface USA? Then they get to the Japanese national anthem gets sung, and Yokozuna's entourage comes out, and it feels big match. Macho Man comes out with Aaron Neville, who's going to sing the American national anthem. Macho's decked out in his red, white, and blue. And this is what I had said earlier, too. Man, a Macho Man versus Yoko match here. The crowd is hot for Macho. That would have been fun. Get Macho the belt, and then let Macho, give it to Brett. I don't know if that's the plan that you want down the line. That would have been really cool. Macho still, as we saw when he went over to WCW, he still had plenty left in the tank. Neville sings the national anthem. Even Yoko coming out first screams, oh, Lex is going to win. You got the champion coming out first, and you got the babyface hero that you've been building up coming out last. He's absolutely winning the title here. And Macho gets the mic again. It's my honor and my privilege to introduce to you the next World Wrestling Federation champion, Lex Luger. And
not bad.
He was really slow when he was doing it too. And the thing too, he comes out to Stars and Stripes Forever, which we understand, but one, it reminds me of Hacksaw, who's had it at different little times, and it doesn't feel like the main eventer music. It feels like a mid-card guy, like a babyface guy, like a Mr. America character. It doesn't to me feel like the guy music coming down the ring. And we get loud USA chants before the bell, and even the stare down at the beginning feels like a big deal. Fuji acts like he's going to come in the ring behind Lex and try to give Yoko the advantage, and Yoko has bulked up. Lex has slimmed down, so he's quicker. But Lex is smart early. He's outsmarting Yoko and Yoko's handlers. Yoko gets a big slam on early. They go back and forth with a decent pace for these two early on. Yoko's back in charge. He chokes Lex Luger, and then Vince talks about how they really don't know how much Yoko weighs. Again, Fuji tries to come in from behind with salt to the eye, but Lex sees it and he gets out of the way. And Lex goes for the body slam early on Yoko, but he can't get it. And Yoko starts to slow things down. This is where he sets up Lex laying against the ring post outside, and he splashes into him. He misses with a chair shot, and that sort of wakes Luger up. You get a double axe handle off the second rope, and then off the top rope from Luger, but Yoko still won't fall. And then and then finally a forearm off the top, and Yoko goes down for a 2 count. We get a bulldog by Luger for 2. We get a double clothesline with both men down. Bobby has a great one here. He says, "It's like a divorce. Nobody wins," which is funny. And Fuji tosses the bucket of salt. Yoko hits Luger with a bucket, but Yoko is so tired he can't even really get over to make a pin. It takes forever. Luger's able to kick out at 2. And this is where Yoko starts to really look exhausted here. He's laying in some chops. He hits the big belly to belly, which I always thought was probably, at least visually, maybe the most like scary looking of his moves. I always felt like when he hit the belly to belly, it was over because he just was going to crush whoever he hit it on. But Lex is able to kick out, and Lex is able to kick out of everything here. At one point, Vince says, which I thought was hilarious, "I've never known an athlete to get this kind of support when the crowd is cheering for Lex." It's like a little bitter at Hogan, maybe. You got 2 guys on the roster in Brett and Taker who get more support right now. Luger tries to fire up. He goes for a body slam, but he can't get it again. 2 count. Yoko gets a 2 count there. And then Yoko pulls Lex over to the corner for the bonsai drop, but Lex moves, and Yoko is in big trouble here. A little more back and forth. Yoko bites him, but Lex is able to move out of the way of a splash. He hits a very low, short body slam, and then it looks like Lex is about to win the match. He gets the body slam, which Hogan couldn't do, and that was the big thing about the match. Can he slam Yoko? He did it on the Intrepid. Can he do it in a match? He nails Fuji. He hits Yoko with the flying forearm. He nails Cornette, but Yokozuna gets knocked outside of the ring, and he gets counted out. And then, Darin, what we get here with the bell ringing, the music playing, and the Steiners and Tatanka coming out to celebrate. Macho Man's in the mix. They put Lex Luger on their shoulders. They're waving the flag as balloons drop down. And Vince McMahon says, as if he's won the title, "When Lex Luger gets his rematch, he will be WWF champ." But he's saying it like he's already won, which is like, why didn't he just win here? And this is just what happens after this, which is, I think, what they did for the Coliseum video exclusive. They're going from, Lex celebrating, not with the title, because he didn't win the title. He won by countout. They go to this package that should have been a package before the match, where they're showing him on the road, interacting with all these kids, what a great guy he is, his family sleeping with him on the bus, and all this stuff. And at the beginning, we get military, JFK, Mount Rushmore, and they've even got footage, clips of the match spliced in here. Darin, this just felt so. We've talked about how they screwed over Lex. I'm not the biggest Luger fan, but this right here, this guy had no shot after this. He had no shot.
I mean, looking back on this, how it appears, based on the fact that everything around and in this match, other than the finish, tells you that Lex Luger is going to win the title. And what it looks to me is that they literally did everything to that point, except instead of him hitting him with the forearm and getting the pin for the win, they changed it to he's hitting him with the forearm and he fell out of the ring for the countout win. That's probably literally all they did here, which speaks to the point. Everything here tells you that Vince changed his mind at the last possible moment. That this was supposed to be a Lex Luger coronation, that he was supposed to win the title, and when Vince had decided that wasn't going to happen, they just said, to hell with it all. We have too much stuff already planned for what's supposed to happen. Just leave it all and we'll do our best to figure it out. That's pretty much what happens here. I'm surprised that Luger was able to get through this match and post-match the way that he did, because we would see times throughout his career, especially after this, where you knew things weren't going Luger's way based on how he performed in the ring. He would get sour and it would show in his work. I didn't get that from this match.
No, I agree.
Yeah, watching this match, he's into it. He's delivering. He's doing the best that he can. He's by no stretch of the imagination mailing it in. And to be honest with you, the match in and of itself, for what it is not awful.
It's better than I remember.
Yeah, it's not awful. Everything around it and what encompasses it is absolutely putrid. But the match itself isn't awful. And I would look, there's a lot of things that if I got the opportunity to sit down with Vince McMahon for an hour and ask him anything that I wanted and he would have to answer it. One of the things would be, can you take me through this period of time in 1993 in what the hell happened here? What were you thinking about? When did you change your mind? And find out what the honest answers to all of that actually was. This completely destroyed any chance Lex Luger had in succeeding as a babyface in WWE. Look, not the greatest worker in the world. Great look. Didn't cut the best promos in the world either. But, again, he really, really got shit on in WWE and never really had the chance.
I've got a lot of problems with this match, not least of which is all the stuff that happens before. Gino, you mentioned they built it up as a big, gigantic match, and that's one thing. All of the pre-match stuff, starting with the anthems, not even including the interview with the bus driver, starting with the Japanese national anthem, until the bell rings, 11 minutes and 40 seconds.
Yep.
And it felt it. My goodness. Now, that's not even withstanding the fact that I have several legitimate logistical concerns. So they bring somebody out to sing the Japanese national anthem. Point of order number one, Yokozuna isn't built from Japan. He's built from Samoa, which is an entirely different, set of islands. Point of order number two, World War II was 50 years ago. The Japanese are our allies now. Can we maybe get this straight? So they bring Luger out to the Sousa March, Stars and Stripes Forever. He gets a pop. It's not a big pop. It's an upper mid-card pop. It's not this is the successor to Hulk Hogan pop.
This is new. There's been no build. This is immediately happened too. It doesn't you know what I mean? They didn't get this marinate at all.
Yep. So they start the match. And immediately Vince goes, oh, Yokozuna has bulked up for this matchup. No, he hasn't. He's always been fat. And that's my thing with Yoko. Look, if you're going to build him as a monster heel, as a special attraction, whatever, that's fine. I understand it. I know that there are certain things he brings to the table. Bonsai drops a cool finishing move. Fine. If you're going to put a guy like that on and run with him for 9 effing months, you have to have more than he's fat in order for me to care. I don't care at all whatsoever about anything Yokozuna does in the ring. There is no reason for me to. He's just a big fat guy who drops and lands on his big rear end from the second rope, and apparently that's devastating.
I think we've broken
I've never gotten him. And you haven't broken me yet. If you didn't break me with the technical mishap earlier and Darin acting like he was on Quake, according to my headset here, and me cutting a ridiculous promo with nothing being recorded, then you're not going to break me now. Do not get me upset. You will not like me when I'm upset. I'm not upset. When I'm upset, you'll know it. Goose Fraba. Deep breath, deep breath. Now, the rest of this match is what it is. It's fine. I think there are a lot of comparisons to be made to the Triple H Roman Reigns match from WrestleMania a couple of years ago. The match itself is not the most offensive thing here. The most offensive thing here is the crowd wants none of this, especially once we get to the ending. The ending, by the way, and I know Darin will love this. Gino, have you started watching The West Wing yet?
I am in almost to season 3. I am flying.
Wow!
Yep.
So
flying.
Here's the thing. I'm happy you said that because you'll get this reference. There's an episode late in season 1 called Let Bartlett Be Bartlett. And the cold open has him giving a speech that has been moved from a very scenic outdoor location.
To this magnificent vista.
Yes, precisely. He gives that speech inside a ballroom because the speechwriters didn't revise the language in time before he got on the stage. That's what this seemed like. This seemed like, it'll be fine. We'll fix it. Well, they didn't. And Lex Luger was never the same. By the way, I want extra credit for cutting a Bobby Heenan-style promo on the technical mishaps earlier and somehow working in a West Wing reference to the main event of SummerSlam 93. You will not get this kind of wrestling discussion anywhere else, people.
I'm going to cut his mic every week, Darin. You know, maybe we'll get a little more fired up Andrew
Let
here.
me tell you a personal story. You know the Be a Star campaign?
But, I mean, and when Andrew was talking about time being wasted, so the bell rings, and most of the shows that we watch, bell rings, a little bit of celebration, there's probably a minute, 2 minutes. Some of the Hogan shows are a little bit longer. Occasionally, you'll get some shows where WWF would do a sort of recap right at the end and sort of, quickly in 30 seconds give a still shot or two of each of the matches and angles that went throughout the show. We get 7 minutes from when the bell rings between the celebration, the weird out-of-place video. I mean, it's so out of order, it's insane. It really doesn't make any sense. And then they come backstage. And, they go to ringside. Yokozuna's still out. So this is 6 minutes later. Yokozuna is still knocked out by the forearm. Then they go backstage, and Lex Luger is back there with the Steiners, Tatanka, and Macho Man. And to be fair, I don't mind. I kind of like starting a new angle at the end of a show. I don't mind that. I think it's kind of a cool, hey, look, this is where we're going to go moving forward. This guy didn't win yet. Like, he's still got unfinished business with Yokozuna, obviously. Like, what are we doing here? I mean, and they're still celebrating backstage like he won the title. We're going to sound like a broken record because you have to be when you watch this and you go, what are they doing? How did he think this was good for Lex? And I agree with you, Darin, in that Lex didn't have that face, and he didn't really even have it with the way he worked in this match. He didn't work poorly in the match. You're just never going to get anything great from these two. And I think Lex was probably in his head going, okay, this is the very beginning of this character for me. I don't really have any reason not to believe Vince. He's made me into a main eventer so far. He says he's going to give me the title, and this guy is going to be, look, he put me on this Lex Express. We're doing all this thing. Sure, he's going to do it. I don't. So I'm going to be a good soldier here, and then, in 2 months at Survivor Series, I'll probably win the title. And unfortunately, he got screwed, and he's not the greatest worker in the world, but this was the time, and they created him to be the champ, and he should have been the champ. Like, this is one of the things you look back in WWF history, honestly, and it's one of the bigger head scratchers ever, that this character they created did not get a little run with the title, at least right here.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about like how everything got botched up here. I mean, from Hogan not wanting to drop the belt to Bret, so you get 9 months of Yoko mismanaging their heels. You get this nonsense. The Survivor Series show leaves a lot to be desired. Then you get into 94, and you get the two of them winning the Rumble at the same time. Then you have to watch Yokozuna wrestle twice at WrestleMania 10, which is a great show. But, that show, I mean, that Bret Owen match could have been for the title. You could have had Bret Luger for the title, which would have been a cool match to have in the annals of wrestling history. I mean, if you think about how much this all got sidetracked and screwed up because of what was going on, it's pretty remarkable about how different the wrestling landscape from April of 93 to April of 94 and even beyond would have looked had they have been able to just keep their plan in place with Hogan and Bret and what they were looking to do moving forward. It would have been almost an entirely different company. It's pretty wild to think about. And because
Darin, is there, really quick, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but is there anything that you won't blame Hulk Hogan for?
that I won't blame Hulk Hogan for.
I mean, maybe if his horse loses.
I mean, no, I could.
You can. We can figure that out.
Yeah,
we'll find a way.
I could see that. I could definitely find a way. Yeah. I mean, I definitely blame him for the Yankees losing.
Sure.
I'll probably blame him for the Giants, being a hapless franchise. Now, I'll find a way to do that. What I won't blame on him? I won't blame the coronavirus on him. I'll give him that.
Thank you.
Okay, there we go. That's progress.
And that's good. That's like the segment that Andrew talks about, say something nice. And Darin knocked it out of the park there.
You're making real progress. I'm proud of you.
I'll go on record as saying that Hulk Hogan is not patient zero of COVID-19.
I don't know if you've watched South Park, the South Park pandemic special, but
hey, by the way, I'll blame another thing on him. You could blame. So here's another thing you could blame on him. He's at the center of the steroid scandal in WWE. You lose Bulldog. Bret Hart versus Ultimate Warrior was supposed to be the title match at Royal Rumble '93. I don't know if you guys knew that. I actually read that the other day in some of my research for this show. So I could blame him for that not happening. I could blame him for being this kind of like skinny version of himself in the spring of '93. And to be honest with you, if you watch this show, and I don't really remember it, but looking back, Luger looks like he's like 25 pounds light here, doesn't he?
He does, yeah.
A little bit, yeah.
And they mention that, which is funny, because they're doing a lot of things to take shots at Hulk Hogan. You could tell Vince, he even says at the King of the Ring match, they say the same thing about Hogan, that Hogan slimmed down to try to be quicker against Yoko, and it obviously doesn't work for Hogan, but the slimming down does work for Lex. I mean, I guess he wins the match, but he doesn't win the title. And, it's unfortunate because this, you look at the players on this show and you go, okay, well, if we could move around, Bret, Undertaker, Shawn Michaels, Mr. Perfect, and just kind of slot them into different places, it could be a pretty good show. It just, nothing really worked. And this is one of the shows where, I mean, we've had shows with really, really bad stuff, but I don't know if we've had a show like this where it might have been that 6-man tag that's the best match on the show. It really might have. This is probably one of the lower ceiling shows as far as like best match of the show that we've had to deal with so far.
Yeah, I completely agree. Look, like I said, I picked this show because there's a lot of political stuff going on behind the scenes. It's a very strange time from WWE. It's an important time from WWE. It's a transitional time for WWE, and we can't pretend like 1993 didn't happen. So at some point we have to, kind of, if we're going to go through all these shows, we have to review this and talk about it. But yeah, it is an absolutely garbage show. I can't say definitively it's the worst SummerSlam of all time. I would need to go back and watch them. But I will say this, Andrew, off the top of my head, I can't think of one that was worse.
Yeah, I would agree with that for sure. And it's not like there wasn't good stuff on here. I love the 6-man match. I will unabashedly say that. That's a 12-minute match that I think you could watch 5 different times and come away with 5 different things that you've seen that you really like about it. That's a genuinely good match. You get a good Steiner Brothers match. Okay, that's good. You get a decent opener with Ted DiBiase and Razor Ramon. Okay, that's good. You get 1, 2, 3 Kid flying around for 5 minutes. That's pretty good. But it goes back to what I said at the top of the show. Basically, what you get here is a tight hour 30, hour 45 show that gets stretched out to almost 3 hours, and needlessly so, with all of the nonsense that WWF insisted on putting in here. You had the Brett stuff that went on for 10 or 12 minutes longer than it could have. You had the stuff before the main event that lasted almost 12 freaking minutes because we really needed 2 national anthems and big entrances and whatnot for the match that we wound up getting. No. I mean, maybe an hour and a half is a little unrealistic, but you're telling me they couldn't have done that in a tight 2 hours? I mean, this was a tough watch. And there were a couple of matches that were fun, but wrestling's supposed to be fun from start to finish, and this just wasn't. This was probably, of everything that we've watched so far, dating back to when we first started doing this, this was probably the toughest watch that I have had from start to finish.
Okay, well, I think I'm going to give you an easier watch.
Thank you.
Next week coming up. It was between 2, but I'm going to leave I'll tell you the one I didn't pick because I will pick it eventually, or Andrew will. Is Bash at the Beach '96. I mean, okay. That's an inevitable one that we're going to get to with the NWO, Hogan, everything happening there. But I wanted to go to one that I thought maybe would have a little bit better work rate, and this is me personally, one of my absolute favorite pay-per-views of all time. And this is probably one of the more recent ones that we've gone to. We're going to go to 2011, and we're going to go to Money in the Bank.
Oh, CM Punk in Chicago.
We got CM Punk, John Cena. We've got a really good Christian Randy Orton match for the World Heavyweight Championship in there. We've got the Money in the Bank matches. Daniel Bryan, Cody Rhodes, Heath Slater, Justin Gabriel, Kane, Sin Cara, Sheamus, and Barrett in one. The other one is Del Rio, Riley, Evan Bourne, Jack Swagger, Kofi, The Miz, R-Truth, Mysterio. And there's a really fun Mark Henry Big Show match on the card too. So this isn't going to be 10 matches, but we're going to have a couple that are long, that are good quality, that are important. This is one of the, of the last, 2020 now, of the last decade. If you're making a list of the biggest matches of the decade, this has to be on any top 5 list if you're talking WWE.
Nice. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, I've actually seen like a few articles when they've ranked the top pay-per-views and stuff like that. I've actually seen this in the top 3 sometimes.
It's great. It is great.
It's a damn good show. A lot of stuff. I mean, look, what Punk was doing back then was not seen before. And look, while we knew, what was scripted in WWE, they did such a good job where they had you thinking that, maybe there was really some shit going on where Punk was really trying to screw Vince over, and he convinced Vince to let him win the match, and he was just going to take off with the belt and show up somewhere else the next day. Like, there was some wild stuff going on behind the scenes back then too.
Yeah, that's going to be so much fun. I'm looking forward to that. I mean, that crowd wanted Cena not just to lose, but to be killed. That was something that WWE has tried to recreate a lot in the past 9 years, that kind of atmosphere. And I honestly can't tell you that they did it. It's just a shame that they wasted the summer of Punk with the angle they wound up running later that year where Cash texted himself.
Yeah. Yeah, and which is cool. We'll have a ton to talk about leading up to this and the things that happen after this. So Money in the Bank 2011 is our next project, and we'll be talking about that one next week. Darin, let us know what's going on with you rest of the week into the weekend, and where can we follow you? And then Andrew, close us out.
Well, before I say that, just a quick question. So you said you're flying through it. What is your early take on the West Wing?
Oh my God. The thing about it is, one of the reasons why I don't think I had watched it so far was in my head, I had a completely wrong idea of what the show was. I thought it was much more of a like NCIS sort of serious political show, and not at all the great. I mean, like any good show, it's based on the characters, right? You could take these group of characters that are built, take them out of the White House, put them in a different spot, and the characters are what make the show. Obviously, the setting of the White House is what's cool too, but the writing is great. It's funny. I love it. I like you like what all of the characters too. In a world of where in TV nowadays, there's so many shows where they make these characters, and there's shows all the time, even shows like Succession or them, which are very good shows. It's like you look around. Who the hell am I supposed to like? Everybody's a bad guy on this show, you know, and it's opposite. You just love every character on the show. It is phenomenal, and there are so many people I didn't realize were on that show. You know, from even just Rob Lowe is phenomenal, and Janny's phenomenal, Whitford's phenomenal. Just and Stephanie loves watching it with me. Now it's nice. The Lakers are done and won it, so I've got more time in the evenings, and when the baseball playoffs are over, I'm going to finish with that soon, because I know there's a special either coming up or something that just happened, and I was like, I got to make sure I'm ready to watch this thing soon. Yeah,
they're redoing one of the episodes, which is kind of centered around the election, where it's about this small town that votes before everybody else does. And they're kind of redoing it in like a play kind of setting. So it's gonna be really cool to watch. But you said you're up to season 3.
I think I'm the very end of season 2, almost into season 3. So yeah, I've gotten through them real quick, and there's definitely been some nights where I'm up 2 hours later than I should have, because I got caught watching 3 more episodes or whatever. Yeah.
Andrew, season 2 from like 17 people through 2 cathedrals. In my money, 2 cathedrals is probably the best episode in the history of the show. But you get when you get into season 3, when you get from like the 2 Bartletts through the end of the season in Posse Comitatus, you get like a run of 10 episodes. It's ridiculous. Like,
when the West Wing was good, it was one of the best episodic shows in the history of television. I'd go back a little further in season 2, because the Stackhouse filibuster is one of my favorite episodes of its entire run. I think that was an episode or 2 before 17 people, and that's just a perfect balance.
Yeah, the one right before it. Yeah. So now when you get through all this, Gino, we have to do a West Wing.
100%. And I appreciate the assist on this, because I trust both of your opinions so much that having heard you talk about it so highly, I figured, okay, I got to give it a few. And I was instantly hooked, just immediately. Absolutely love it. And did not take long for me to get into. So can't wait to discuss that more with you. Andrew, do you have anything on tap for the Champagne and JD this week?
Well, this week we're starting to piece it together now. We're recording this on a Tuesday night. We'll be recording Champagne and JD on Thursday. The big thing this week is actually down under in Australia, as they are going to be looking at the Everest, which is their version of the Pegasus World Cup. Everybody ponies up an outrageous amount of money for some of the slots. It's a turf sprint down there. So we'll be taking a good look at that. We've started looking at some of our guests this week. Unfortunately, we had no show last week, and I'll dive in a little bit because you guys will appreciate this. Between my co-host falling ill last week, thankfully he is far better, and the guest that we had lined up doing something no guest has done to us. He ghosted us.
However,
I'm not going to name names on this show. I will say, though, that karma came to collect a couple days later because that trainer lost a brutal photo finish at a major track over the weekend. I'm just saying, karma comes to collect and works in very mysterious ways.
I've been very lucky. I haven't had too many of those. And what's nice is that, well, I know that when I do, I've got a couple of guys off the bench that have helped me out with wrestling, with horse racing, breaking big races down, any other sports you want to talk about. Two of my best buds, Darin Zoccali, Andrew Champagne. It was a lot of fun talking with you again. It's funny. It felt like it's been 3 weeks, I think, since we did a wrestling show. And after doing them so often, even some weeks where we did two, when there was not a whole lot going on, it was fun to get back at talking with you again. And I look forward to watching Money in the Bank.
In New York right now, between the Yankees being out, the Giants and the Jets being a combined 0-10, Le'Veon Bell getting cut today. Thankfully, I'm a Giant fan. But anyway, there's nothing going on in New York right now. So I have nothing to watch. I can't watch the Rays versus the Astros. Like, anything you need me to talk about, believe me, I got nothing but time.
Love it. I'm going to milk you on that, too. And I always do with you, Andrew. Thanks again so much, guys. And I look forward to talking to you about Money in the Bank next week. So Darin Zoccali, Andrew Champagne, like always here, talking on an old wrestling rewatch on That's What G Said. Don't go anywhere, folks. We'll take a quick break, but plenty more where that came from. A big thank you to Andrew, to Darin for talking some wrestling there with us. Love that old wrestling rewatch. And don't forget about our next one, Money in the Bank 2011. So, again, thanks to this week's guest, Alex Regla, talking Lakers, Andrew and Darin. Next week coming up, that Lakers celebration show. If you want to be a part of it, let me know. Reach out. If you want to share some of your thoughts, your memories, your jubilation over the Lakers title win, we'll continue on with the NFL coverage. We will discuss what's happening in the MLB World Series. We will know what the World Series looks like. Come on, Dodgers. Come on, Dodgers. College football. We'll start getting into college football a little bit more as NBA now and baseball will be winding down, and racing, the Breeders' Cup, only a few weeks away. So like always, we'll have tons of racing coverage. The Mandalorian's going to start soon, so I'm going to be recapping episodes of Mandalorian. When that starts in a few weeks, we're going to get back into a couple different TV shows that we'll be recapping. So much to look forward to on That's What G Said. And again, thank you to our sponsors, Thrive Fantasy, promo code GINO will get you that instant bonus when you deposit at least 20. Old Smoke Clothing, promo code GINO there will get you free shipping on your order. SarahCandles.com, all natural soy wax candles, promo code GINO, 10% off your purchase. Cindy Carava, full service realtor. If you need anything going on in the world of real estate, make sure to contact her. And then over at Stable Duel, those daily horse racing contests. If you have any questions about Stable Duel, let me know. Download that app and get involved in the big ones this weekend. That huge contest at Keeneland on Saturday with the $5,000 prize pool at a $25 entry. Folks, make sure to share the show around with your friends, and I hope you all have a great weekend. Thanks again, folks. Joey Cleveland, my good friend. Let's have that That's What G Said theme song.